Meeting's called to order at 6:01 p.m. of the special meeting of CUPOP. So thank you everybody for coming. We really appreciate it. First item are the minutes from our last meeting. Is there a motion?
Motion approved.
Second? Oh, who do you want?
Second, Aaron.
Aaron. Okay. Any discussion? All right, all in favor? Great, okay. Thank you, though. I appreciate it. Appreciate the support. All right, great. All right. So we call this meeting to start beginning the POCD process. So as we indicated, I admit this is my first time doing this. I'm assuming, is it everyone's first time engaged in this? So I did review, and I hope everybody had the opportunity to, the action agenda for the last POCD to get an idea of what we were looking at, and I did make notes, so hopefully I'll make this go smoothly. Don't be nervous. I know it looks very lengthy, but we were mentioned quite a few times within the action agenda. A lot of these items will cross over to conservation, which I'm glad we have a representative here from conservation today, as well as other committees and commissions within the town. So I'm trying to decide, and I'm going to ask Chris Sullivan the best way to organize this. So this isn't necessarily in any particular order. In fact, if I were really smart, I would have done it. I would have written an order of the action agenda from 2015, but I wasn't that smart. So I'm just going to hopefully, I guess we can go in order. I could try to figure out where I am on my notes. So, does everybody have a copy of the POCD that they could pull up? If not,
Is it this, that the abbreviated version that was circulated, pulling out all the CUPOP stuff?
well, I went through the entire POCD because there are some items that I feel that, given our charge, we should be involved in. Is that the one?
That is the list.
Before we go deep, I just wanted to make sure I was seeing everything. So I saw a survey that was done recently, like they surveyed 7% of the town. Then I saw the old POCD, and one of my questions was, do we have so the POCD kind of lays out just facts, like the population, the school system. Do we have those facts updated yet that we can? Okay, because that's kind of,
yes or no?
because it's kind of like,
Right.
hey, I kind of agree with the old one in a lot of ways, but if the town demographics had majorly shifted, that would change my opinion of some things,
So
Right.
I looked at the 2020 census results on the census website, and the short version is that there have not been dramatic changes in demographics compared to the 2015 report, which is based on the 2010 census, but several of the predictions about the demographic changes in the town that were made in 2015 have not come to fruition.
Well, the school population went up when they
Right,
said
so that predicted that the overall population of the town would dip by a couple hundred people. It went up by about 90 people. The median age went up by about 1 year when you consider it. So it went from like 46 and change to 47 and change or something like that, which was not consistent with the prediction, which predicted that it would continue to rise. But 10 years later, the median age is basically the same, and when you consider that a lot of people are now 10 years older than they were then, that means there's been more young people. Maybe some people have sold their houses and moved out, and younger families. So there have been some shifts that maybe look the same on paper, but suggest that some of the predictions didn't come out the way that they were.
Right, so we could start with our list, and if anything changes, obviously this isn't set in stone, it's just a recommendation of items that we may want to start looking at. We're going to finalize this at our next meeting. This meeting is just to go through items that we perhaps want to add as CUPOP items. So,
Can I just ask you a question?
We went through some of the same things. Would you like me to put in what some of the things that we were thinking too? Because we also thought that we weren't included in some of the things where we should have. And
okay.
And I also
bet there are a lot of the same things too.
Sheila McCreven talked about CUPOP, and 10 years ago, CUPOP and conservation had meetings together to work together on it. So I was just putting that out there as a
Okay.
possibility.
Thank you. Let me start with this, and then when we'll kind of, I bet we can fill in as conservation gets involved. Okay, great. So the first one, I guess I can go in order with the old POCD, if that makes more sense. So the first thing on page 137, which is, it starts just for purposes on 136. Action item was to review proposals for development on a portion of the country club land that take advantage of the site's unique access to water, sewer, and transportation infrastructure to create transitional housing options for older residents and provide the opportunity for Woodbridge residents to age within the community. So, part one, review proposals for development on a portion of the country club land. So we all know that now the Board of Selectmen has now already gone through proposals, not necessarily for development, it's for a consultant to go over the CCW. So that is something that I had earmarked for not just the Board of Selectmen to be involved with discussing CCW, but also conservation, housing committee, CUPOP, recreation, all the things that we have discussed before. So
That was a question I had. When Board of Selectmen's listed, does that assume everybody's included? Like,
no,
because we're
no.
all charged under them?
Yeah, no, it doesn't.
Okay.
So, but they'll be listed what I noticed is that a majority of these action agenda items, they will be listed on because they are the decision makers. But I believe that a lot of us should be involved that are not involved in the last one. So that is one item that I would like to keep. I don't know what your feelings are on that. I see our conservation representative here agreeing with that. So,
Well, I agree that lots of agencies should be involved. And
Right.
further down, it talks about
specifics,
protecting
right?
the natural character of that land too, so.
Yeah, if I recall, there are 3 or 4 or 6 different country club items on that
There are,
list. And
yep.
I know that there's
I've
this,
heard from the people in the know is that the POCD was very oriented towards the country club, and that was one of their main things they had thought
Right.
they could efficiently
Right.
figure out. So,
And there's other items that I have that are not in this action
There's only
agenda.
3, they only had it, right, it's 14 years they've had that. So the country club, they inherited it, the plan of turn, like when this
Right,
last
it
one was
was-
written.
it was pretty new.
Well, it was not quite a golf course anymore, because it was far enough away from that fell apart. And now it's, what does the town do with it? So that was the main, yeah, so that's about the timing.
So, okay, so we agree on that, so that's good, I like that, all right. We'll check that one off, all right, great. So on page 138, it indicates, this is housing. Now, obviously, Housing Committee was non-existent in 2015. Action item, encourage an increase in the supply of starter homes and housing appropriate for young professionals. Obviously, they only have TPZ listed here, and of course, we're not housing, so we're not obviously going to advocate for that, but in our purposes, let me find this page here. I have conservation here, hold on, let me see. It is, I want to get my support housing committee when appropriate with identifying potential town-owned properties that may be used to assist with implementation of the housing plan. So we can speak generally to that, and I don't think we necessarily have to get into specifics, although we could, and I could just put little subsections, because there's a section of starter homes for young professionals, and there's a section which kind of repeats what the other generalized statement, which was housing to provide for older residents so that they can age in place. So that was age-restricted housing. So we can actually put subheadings under that to be more specific. And at the end of the day, they'll decide what's going to be placed in there, but we can certainly do that.
All right, so on page 138.
Yes.
That's what you were referencing.
Yes. Oh, I got it, thank you. Yes, page 138. So it begins really where we already discussed, page 137, right? And then that's just generalized country club statement. And then on page 138, it specifically discusses, this isn't just country club, obviously. This is just the goal is expand Woodbridge's menu of housing options.
Yep.
So that's not specific to the country club, right?
Right.
That's just in general in Woodbridge. So that was my general statement, was support housing committee when appropriate with identifying potential town-owned properties that may be used to assist with the implementation of the housing plan. So I think that kind of covers that section. We could specifically just put in the 2015 language, or say C, page whatever, for those 2 items for housing.
So we're assuming that those are still agenda items?
Yeah, and we know they are, because the housing plan was just, what was it? I think it was 2 years ago, I want to say, that the housing plan was approved by the Board of Selectmen and was submitted to the state of Connecticut. So yes, that's still an item.
And this is,
Oh, go ahead, I don't need to.
no, and I'm just picking on this one just because it's more specific than the one we just talked about. So as we go through this, are we also saying we agree these should be on there, or we're just saying we're involved in these ones, we're ignoring the rest? Like
We're only worried about what CUPOPs is supposed to be and for action agenda items, right? So our job is to give to TPZ for review action items that CUPOP should be involved in moving forward. And if those involve some of the goals that are within 2015 and additional ones, because there are additional ones that were not in 2015, then so be it. But it's just a list of items that we know are out there, we know are action items. What items should we be involved in, right? And that's what every commission and committee is supposed to be doing now.
yeah, so looking at the list, we say, yep, we still like these, we're involved in those, and then we're adding 10 more, we want to be involved in them.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did, as part of this process, the process generally, not
Yep.
just our piece of it, is there or has there been a review of here are all the action items listed in 2015 and here is, you know, the current status? Because I noticed, you know, they break them into ongoing 0 to 3 year, 4 to 6 year, 10-year priority. So presumably a lot of these things that were marked as priorities for 0 to 3 years, something should have been done, either completed, decided it was no longer a priority. Has anyone done an accounting of like, here's
Well,
what the list was? Like, does anyone
yeah.
go back and look at it 10 years later to see whether it was actually done, or do we just?
Sure, I mean, I would think that that TPZ would, right, because they're spearheading this entire process. And we know from, you know, working within the commissions and committees and towns, things that we know have been completed and things that have not been completed, right? So, and I'm sure conservation knows that as well, because there are some items that have been completed, but there are a lot that have not. So as we go along, we can identify those. But of course, if we're incorrect in our assessment, then TPZ, I'm sure, will go ahead and do that. And by the way, they're going to probably add on, or they could, not probably, they may, add on additional things that we do not see that they assign to CUPOP or conservation or someone else that we didn't think of. So this is just we're kind of helping them with their assessment, I guess is the best way to put it. So,
And just a
Sure.
point, I went and got the Ridgefield, Connecticut POCD, and it's very thoughtful, and it's very well done, and I recommend, it's online.
oh good, all right, okay, thank you.
And if there's a few other towns that would give us, because it seems
An
like
idea.
the depth and the
Mm-hmm.
integration of the different groups was pretty good,
Great.
so it's a resource.
Now, one thing, thank you. One thing, I'm going to go out of order for a second because I did not mark the page on this. But in 2015, and if you know the page, shout it out, there was assist town with trail maintenance when appropriate. And that was assigned to conservation and the trail master and CUPOP. Now, I do know that, and I want your thoughts on this, I don't think necessarily CUPOP has to be involved with the trail maintenance per se. We're only in charge of determining or making recommendations of the use of a property, right? So once it's decided it's a trail, we really shouldn't be involved in that. And plus, we do have, I believe it's run by, I know Trail Master's involved, but Woodbridge Land Trust, I know, has First Sundays where they go and they do participate in trail maintenance. So right off the bat right there, that's one that I don't think we necessarily need to be involved in. I think once the property is decided to become a trail or whatever, we're out of the equation, so to speak. So what are your...
That's page 147.
Thank you. Thanks,
yeah.
Patty. I knew you knew what that was.
Yeah, thank you. We had at one time gotten a little bit involved in that when the scouts were doing some projects and they were presenting to CUPOP some ideas they had on picking
yes.
up, things
Yeah.
like that.
Right.
So that's how we passively were involved. They did a presentation, some high school kids came to us and it was great.
And I think that's different. Like, I agree. I mean, if they wanted to do anything to the trails that could potentially change it. For example, I know that they built the bridges over the
Eagle Scout
Scouts.
projects.
Yes, those
Yeah.
types of things. Yes, they would still come to us and talk to us about it. But in terms of maintenance of the trails, I don't think that necessarily falls within our,
No, but
Purview.
the high school project was maintenance. They were gonna do some repairs to things and because the cross country, it was cross country runners. They were running and they were running into
Right,
the
that's
same
right, yeah.
tripping or something and we supported,
Yeah,
their,
sure.
their efforts. So that's the only
Yeah.
time that I ran into that we were kind of involved in the trails.
right, right.
So who would they go to? So whenever, if we
Trail
drop
master.
off, so if that's whenever like we say, nope, no CUPOP. If there's another board covering it, I'm okay with that. Then so if they go to the trail master, what is his authority of the trails, the land?
We're gonna ask to be added to that,
Okay.
because a lot of that land is on conserved land.
Right.
No, so my point is, let's say there's an easement that the landowner's not allowed. How does that work today? Are we involved in that? Are you guys involved? Is the trail master,
So
how does that work
our
today?
charge is just to determine the usage or change in usage and to review properties within town-owned properties in the town of Woodbridge, right? So once that determination has been made that the land's conserved for trail purposes or whatever the situation may be, at that point in time, we really should not be involved in it. And if
Okay.
conservation is picking it up as the commission that will be in charge, the trail master will, and I know Woodbridge Land Trust, which is a private entity, true, it's 501c3, not a town agency, but if we have conservation involved, they can monitor that, and should there be an issue with easements moving forward, of course, the town attorney would then get involved.
Yeah.
So sort of an analogy, like the town owns, like if Pease Park, like we don't cut the grass on the soccer field.
Exactly.
There. It's like that decision's been made,
Yep,
so we don't handle the day-to-day.
correct.
Do I have that? Okay, so we handle sort of the front
Yeah,
end.
so I would
Front
agree,
end, exactly.
so I think classifying trails, we're still on, maintaining,
We're not.
we're not. I'd agree with
Right,
that.
right,
Yeah.
okay.
Classifying property, the trails, where the easements
Right,
are.
right.
Like, that kind of thing, I think we're on for CUPOP.
But we don't need to assist the town in trail maintenance when appropriate.
I don't think CUPOP's charge is to do trail maintenance. I
And
would
just
agree.
one thought, Andy Danzig, the trail master, is connected, he's not,
No, he's not, but I know that.
He works
he's
with Land
separate,
Trust,
but he works
yes.
with them for those
For the
first
town.
Sunday
Yes,
trail
yeah.
maintenance, right, I know he's not part of it. So, but I do know that we have the 501c3 Woodbridge Land Trust, Conservation's asking to be the town, we'll call you a liaison to that with the trail master, so I
Sure.
think that's fully covered.
Yeah, so I
Okay?
think maintenance is the thing we want to drop out of. But,
Right, that's right, so
but
that's.
then, trail creation on town land?
Well,
like,
that's usage of town-owned property, that just falls within
That's still
our
us,
charge,
yeah.
yes,
Well,
that's still
if
us.
the land has already been allocated, this is for trails, do we have say in where the trails go and what they connect to, or is that a different
I
organization?
don't think that's us though, still.
Now, like for example, I'll use Enoch as an example, right? I mean, if we made the agreement or the recommendation that it should be conserved in perpetuity, any trail that's placed on the property to be determined by the trail master, and I think we said Board of Selectmen, Trail Master, and whomever to decide the best location for the trail, because really, that's their expertise, right? So, but that doesn't preclude us in the future from either agreeing to an acquisition of other open space, right? Or we were kind of discussing this the last meeting, right? And making the recommendation that trails should be added onto that property. I know they're already there, it's a bad example, but you know what I mean. If they weren't already there, to make the recommendation that trails be placed on the property to be determined by, right, the trail master in conjunction with Board of Selectmen or whomever else, right? But we're not involved in maintenance, so it's completely. And to your point, right, we don't mow the grass at Peas and all that, so, okay,
Or
great.
creating new trails.
I also put in, so I'm gonna get to conservation for a second. Number 2, support Conservation Commission when appropriate with identification of town-owned open space, both protected and unprotected, and identify potential town-owned property that may be used to carry out the goals of conservation.
which page is that?
Oh, this is one I was suggesting to the commission,
A new one.
yes.
Oh,
Say
it's a new
again?
one.
Sorry.
Support Conservation Commission when appropriate, just the same language they use for everybody else, with the identification of town-owned open space, which is what we should be doing, both protected and unprotected, and identify potential town-owned property that may be used to carry out the goals of conservation. So for example, should conservation come to one of our meetings and say, we would like to utilize, this part of this property for, I'm gonna say a farm, I'm not making up an excuse, like a farm. And then we would assess it, or if they say, hey, is there anything in town that, any town-owned properties, I mean, they're very familiar with town-owned properties like we are, but, the off chance that they say, listen, we're looking to do, create another farm like Massaro, I don't know, something like that. What properties do you see as potential use for that? And then we could help them with that and support them with their goals when appropriate. So it's kind of like a general statement that we're going to help out conservation too, should they need any identification assistance with town-owned properties to support their goals.
In open space.
Yes.
So would that be kind of related to the section on 148 where developing Woodbridge open space planning comes in? I'm just trying to think where you wouldn't ask them to insert this.
It would probably be inserted within the conservation piece, yes. So where we wanted to conserve open space, that would probably fall right in there.
So on 147, it's develop a classification system for open space, then develop an open space maintenance plan, then promote rec facilities.
Right, that's a whole, so we'll talk about that in a second, yeah, because that's a whole other
Then
section,
it's develop a Woodbridge open space plan.
which was
Which
completed.
is like the dog park
Right.
and things like
But
that.
Right.
And then there's develop a formal policy and procedure for acquisitions of open space and publicly owned property.
Right, that's different. This is just supporting the goals of conservation. We can decide where we're going to ask them to place it later, but I just want to get our action items done
Oh,
first.
sorry, I was
And then
trying
we
to
can,
figure
yeah,
it out.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
oh.
we'll once we make our list, then we can kind of see where it falls in.
Okay.
Because the open space plan is a different issue, but we could talk about that when we get to that page. But that's different. So anyway, any questions about supporting conservation in their goals?
Thumbs up.
Makes sense.
Okay. So, right along.
Great.
All right. Supporting Conservation Commission when appropriate with the implementation of Conservation Commission's Greenway Plan.
What page is it?
I'm making that up.
Oh. That's fine.
I should say that. I'm adding that.
So I think in the sense of not duplicating,
It's kind of similar to here.
there's
Yeah.
one that reads.
Well, Greenway Plan is, so this is a new, this kind of took language out of here and I'm adding new items in here because that section on conservation we have to go through, because I'm glad that Sharon's here because that's a whole other situation. That's the open space plan. Their Greenway Plan, and I wanted to ask you this, I'm glad you're here. The Greenway Plan, that details, and I just want to make sure I'm correct on this because it's been a little bit since I read it, but it details your trails throughout the town, right? The continuity of the trail system, correct? Okay, good. So just want to make sure.
And it
Yeah.
has,
Okay,
There are other trails too.
right.
and it has
Your wish list.
hopeful additions.
Right.
Is the way I would say it.
Right.
Like, don't have the property, don't have the easements, but it'd be cool if we can do this.
Right.
Kind of ideas.
Okay, so
Okay.
then,
So, Nicole, what I was saying
Both
is
for-
one that reads close to that. Develop an open space plan, focus on expanding and preserving greenways and targeting parcels with valuable characteristics. So there's one that's similar, or we add another one right next to it that has your words.
Or just add CUPOP to it.
I mean, yeah,
It's
I
about-
mean,
it's
we
about-
wouldn't
Yeah,
target,
so it's
see that,
good.
yeah, we wouldn't target them necessarily, but should conservation find a piece of property, for example, Litchfield's a good example, right?
But on there
As a-
is Country Club and CUPOP. Conservation's not even on it, on that specifically.
I know. So what page is that?
What page is it?
148.
I got it, hold on a second.
Yeah, but isn't conservation, I have developed.
It's conservation's on here,
Yeah.
CC.
CC
I'm sorry, I was
conservation.
thinking that was Country Club.
Okay, so, I didn't wanna go to this page, but I guess we're gonna go to this page
Feels
now,
like a
so.
country club. When
All right, so I'll jump to 148. So develop an open space plan. The open space plan was created by conservation, right? And it was already submitted, so that's already been completed. So to answer your
Well, the
question, you
greenway
can
has
check
been
that out.
submitted, I guess the open space has been.
I don't know if that's.
The open space
you guys count that as the
was,
same thing?
it's different,
I think
because
it's
it's
different.
different reports.
Okay.
That's why I have it listed separately, because there's an open space plan and there's a greenway plan. And then you have focus on preservation of key parcels and closing gaps in existing protections. Of course, conservation is on that. So, I mean, here's my thought on this. So, because we're CUPOP and I don't want to say we're Switzerland, but I wonder if, we're not going to be on here identifying key parcels for housing. That's housing's job. We are going to support when appropriate any potential town-owned I know it's a semantics and I sound like a lawyer, but we're going to support the goals when appropriate of housing, right? So we're not
so
identifying anything.
I would
So-
picture the same one would be under the housing statement.
Right, well.
Now, whether we should be on it or not.
We
Meaning-
should not be focusing and identifying key parcels on our own for any housing. That should
No,
be
but
brought
closing
to
gaps on
us.
protections would be us. Like if we have a park that doesn't have the right language in it that protects it.
That would be conservation. Because we may not necessarily vote on agreeing to put a conservation easement in perpetuity on a property if there's other interests in the property.
No, I'm saying like, let's say we have right next to the Darling House where a trail is and we recognize like, oh, this has no formal protection. It's just something that's part of the greenway.
That would be conservation, and
They
then they
would
would,
recommend-
and then
okay.
they would recommend it, and then we would be asked for input on it, and then we would support them, potentially. I mean, I can't imagine
Okay.
anybody else being interested in a trail, but, hopefully not, right? But that's would be for conservation, to identify the need for a conservation easement in perpetuity, right? And then we would subsequently get involved, potentially, maybe not even, because it would be coming from them to the Board of Selectmen to have that protection implemented on our property.
So
I'll give you another example.
I'm not disagreeing. What I'm trying to focus in my mind, because in a lot of these goals and things, it says you're doing this as CUPOP. You're trying to back off that a little bit and say, no, conservation is going to tap us when they need help on this, right? Okay.
10 years ago, just give you a little history on here. 10 years ago, I mean, us following the charge and what we're supposed to be doing is kind of a relatively new concept in terms of us making recommendations on the property, reviewing the properties, making these reports. It's kind of like a new process. And we did used to, as Sharon indicated, really didn't have our own identity for a little bit, and we're meeting with conservation for quite some time, whereas I think that probably, me personally, and I'm going to make my opinion, you could disagree with me, but I think that was, if we had a particular project that we were working on together, yes, that would be appropriate. But in general, that probably wasn't appropriate, because that would be no different than us meeting with housing alone,
No, I
or
agree.
us meeting with recreation alone, right? So that's kind of the time frame that this was created, so I feel like we need to separate ourselves. I mean, conservation certainly should be the entity that's making the recommendations that items should be, protected, right, in perpetuity or that. But however, when that does occur, there's going to be times that we're going to come across in our review of the properties, right, when we become more knowledgeable about the properties, that there will come time that perhaps we do see this and somebody says to us, hey, listen, like they come to our meetings, right, so they can say to us, this property, we have a trail, and we did it with Enoch, right? This has a trail, it's not protected. And our recommendation was to protect this trail in perpetuity. So, for a conservation easement in perpetuity, right? That's a perfect example of that. But yes, I think personally, looking at our charge and reading it, that we should be separate, and that we shouldn't be doing everything together.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, with the same thing in talking to the housing committee, if we looked at I don't remember if it's 52 Brookwood, that's an empty lot that should have a house on it, we believe. And the fact that it doesn't, it means there's one less housing unit in Woodbridge because someone hasn't built that. And so we should say to the housing committee, hey, by the way, the town owns this empty lot that probably should get a house on it. What they do with it at that point is
so what we do is they're notified that we're reviewing this property, just like I notify all the commissions and committees, right? And then I ask for their input on it. And then what would happen is we've had another property, it wasn't Brookwood, Milan. We did have a property, for example, Milan's a good example, where housing did come back to us and asked and gave a recommendation to us that they recommend housing on this particular parcel, right? So then we include that within the report and it goes to the Board of Selectmen. That's how we get input from all the committees and the commissions in town. Just like, conservation provides their input as well. I mean, for Brookwood, we had other properties on Brookwood that were wetlands. So we sent it out there. We had input from wetlands, we had input from conservation. So we include all of that. So that's how we get their information. They know about it because we've given them notice about it.
But to answer your question, yes.
Yeah.
Right? We just go probably this one, probably for housing, that one, probably for conservation. grab the other board's opinion and give it to the board of selectmen.
Because ultimately, whose decision is it?
There's,
Yeah,
Not
exactly.
ours.
So, right. Okay. So, all right. So then I would like
So
to
idea is
continue.
supporting role for all of these
Yes,
kind of
right.
open space things, okay.
So we got Greenway Plan for conservation. We've got Open Space Plan, both of which I believe have both been submitted separately because they are separate plans. Same token, support recreation when appropriate with identification of town-owned property designated for recreation and to identify potential town-owned property that may be used to carry out goals of recreation. So similar language to.
Is this a new one also?
Yes.
But it's kind of,
so you basically have the same one for each of the committees, right?
Not all, but some, yes. Because we don't support everybody. But.
it's not coming from nowhere. I mean, it's kind of drawing from this.
Right, it's drawing from this,
Yeah.
it's drawing from our current reviews, it's
Yeah.
drawing from our current asks, our current, the things that we're seeing, right? I mean, we have seen properties
Right.
that are open space but allow for recreation. We actually have one open right now. So it's coming from not only this, but open projects that we have going
But it's
on.
helpful to tie it back into this.
Right, exactly.
Translate the information.
I mean, this 2025 action agenda should look different. I mean, to your point, you would hope it looked very different than 2015, but unfortunately, I think there's going to be some repeats on here. But
Right, but I mean, just not a
Yeah.
single item that we were tagged in had
Right.
the 10-year time frame. They
Right.
all were in the shorter one. And
Right.
I didn't, cross-reference every other
Right.
board's lists, but like,
yeah,
presumably the town will have a different list 10 years on when a whole
right,
big number of the things on the last list were supposed to be handled
right, exactly.
by 6 years.
Right. Did you have a
Do
question?
you have an extra copy of what you're reading?
I don't. It's the
Okay.
POCD. I'm
No,
sorry.
but have you got
Oh
your?
no, these are my notes. These are my
Okay,
notes.
not everyone has that.
No, no,
Okay.
no. I
Okay,
will.
these are
I will
the
make
notes
it
from
look
last week.
nicer
Yeah,
for the next meeting, and I'll send it to you before the meeting, so you have
Okay.
it. Okay.
Cool.
I'll make. These are just notes I took
Sure,
quickly today.
no problem.
So, sorry.
That's all right,
It's
I'm
gonna
just
be
trying to
great.
understand.
Yes, I will. I will provide it to you before the meeting, so everybody has it.
Okay.
All right, next one, complete review of all town-owned properties and provide a comprehensive report for each property, including recommendation on use of all town-owned properties. I wonder where that came from, our charge. And that's our biggest project right now. And now,
When we make these suggestions, are we going to be defining the time frame?
no,
No.
I think it's gonna be, well, I don't know, to be honest with you, I'm gonna say no. But, just to give you guys an idea, we really haven't been given a lot of, guidance on this. So we're doing the best we can, and Sharon's laughing, she knows. To try to create this list, and I'm sure that they will have feedback and bring it back to us to review it again.
Do
Okay.
we or do they solicit feedback? Because planning and zoning is the one who owns this project, right?
Yep.
Formally. Aside from the list, do they solicit, welcome, allow feedback to any of the other content in the plan? Any of those 100 pages of narrative that come before this, or does nobody see that until it's final?
That's a good question. I could try to find the answer for you if you like. I don't know the answer. I don't know if conservation knows that answer either.
I think we have a recommendation that they should be looking at other people's POCDs that are more expansive, and we have some recommendations of things, or I think we're thinking of doing some recommendations of things that we'd like to include that weren't included, like. our
Similar to
carbon
ours, yeah, right.
Sequestration, and is it increasing or decreasing, and, different forests and the balance and.
Oh, in the introductory information?
And also, the state has a POCD that you guys might want to look
Yeah.
at, because it's very, it has the agenda that we're supposed to be supporting. And it has a whole matrix of, I think it has climate change in the center of it, and just all the different housing and conservation, and
Yeah.
they're pretty conservation centric, a lot of it, housing too, but, yeah.
Okay. So we're off the hook for conservation housing, I guess, right?
Support roles.
Support, we're supporting you. We
Okay.
support you, okay. Speaking of supporting, here's another one. So this I got from actually language within the action agenda, and I may repeat it later on because I was frantically trying to make this list, but we were actually, this came from Barbara Hagan-Smith, indicating that conservation, it was conservation technically, right? Because she's attached with the Historical Society and with making the little QR codes with the history. So we are going to put in there, support the Historic Society and conservation with appropriate, with identification of town-owned property with historical significance. Now, I don't know, do you want me to include conservation? I mean, I don't have the final say, obviously, but I could certainly put conservation in there as well, because you were instrumental in getting those QR codes. And what I've been noticing is that when we go through the deeds, Barbara Hagan-Smith is very interested in some of the historical significance of these properties that we're reviewing. So I think that we should be supporting the Historical Society, and I could also include you as well on that, because you are doing the QR codes.
Yeah, we are, but that's a short-term project, and it's a long, maybe.
Do you want me not to put you on there, because I just keep a Historical
So read
Society?
it again, let me just hear.
So it says, support Historic Society when appropriate with identification of town-owned properties with historical significance.
No, I think that's just historic, and
Okay.
I think we're integrating in the same way.
Okay, all right. I'll take you off the list then. I won't put that on your to-do
Okay.
list then. Okay. Now this is a new one that I just put on this list. I don't know if it's going to stay or not, but this is again another project that we were asked to kind of start looking at. Not in the near future. I doubt it'll be within the little shorter end of this, but assist with the identification of town-owned property appropriate for potential new construction of the Woodbridge Police Department. And that's something we discussed the last meeting. I don't know.
Do we want to be so specific, or?
I don't know.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
might be.
I would say for
Uh-huh.
potential construction of town.
Well, the reason, I'm going to tell you what I was told.
Municipality services.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask, I'm just leaving it there for now, and I'll get feedback on that. But I was told that you want to include in the POCD, one thing I was told is that you want to include within the POCD as much as possible, because when you apply for grants, one of the first things they're going to do is look at the POCD to see if it's actually part of your action agenda.
And I noticed there were some that were similarly specific
Yeah.
on the last one about what to do with the firehouse, what to do with the center building.
Right. I feel like we have to leave it in there.
So part
But
of
I
me,
will, yeah.
Well,
part of me
what I'm
thinks
thinking-
it might be such a short-term thing that we might need to act on it before
Right.
all this gets published. But there are
point.
definitely
Yeah, that's
some
the point.
items on the 2015 one that are like,
Very specific.
evaluate this issue at this building. So
Probably
it-
because of grants.
it would be consistent with what was done in the past.
Right.
But I'm thinking, does it make sense to have both, right? Say, here's a general thing, we're here to help if we've
Oh,
got-
that's coming.
And then, okay. don't want to ruin your intro here, you know?
But repeat how you worded the police department, what were you?
Assist.
Assist.
But we're not a building department, right? So I just said
Right.
assist with the identification, or I could say support, again, because we like the word support. Assist with the identification of town-owned property appropriate for potential new potential new construction of the Woodbridge Police Department, because we don't know if it's going to be, if this is actually going to happen, if they're going to, we already discussed briefly about the exorbitant, estimate they got for the police department. So we don't know if they're going to remain where they are or if they're going to move elsewhere, but that was brought to our attention, so that is something on our radar. I don't know if that's something that's going to happen within the next 10 years. That seems like a long time, but 10 years later it just flies on by. But I think that we should put it there, because if there are potential for grants, I think we need to be, but I'm sure they'll tell us if they don't want it in the action agenda, because these are just recommendations.
Yeah, I mean, put it, let them check it out.
Right, they'll check it out and they'll take out what they don't like, is basically what's gonna happen. Okay,
Because there was a design professional that already did a whole study on
Right,
that and
right.
came in, so I'm sure they had some behind the scenes work they've done for if does it make sense to stay here or move somewhere else, and usually that's part of the study.
yeah, and I know, but
We're gonna look at that study.
I think
too.
that it was such a high amount that they're contemplating, because it's an old building and it may cost a lot more to fix it than to just build a new one. That's why they're looking to see, perhaps we'll start getting estimates to see if it's cheaper to build a new one.
There's so many towns dealing with that with schools especially.
Right.
I
Old
know.
brick buildings, built in the 60s, like, what do you do with these things?
The remediation is what, to
That
begin
kills
with.
you, yeah,
No,
exactly.
yep.
So
Such-
I'm gonna,
Such a problem.
So I'm gonna leave it specific for now, in case we do, that is an item, and they have to get grants for that. All right, another support. or support recreation with the upgrade of town-owned properties currently being used for recreation, including but not limited to, and I know you're gonna say, Pease Park, Acorn Field, West River, and Center Fields.
So, I agree. Do you have another one that's more specific to bathroom facilities, lights, start like name the
So I was
things?
gonna list the things, I'm gonna ask them if they want me to list the things, but I think that if we I think upgrade will get us into a grant, but I will just double check on that, okay?
Yeah,
So
I was
will
gonna
double
say,
check on
that was one of my lists,
specifics.
is goes very specific on
Yeah.
those things.
I did initially have it that way, actually, it's funny you said that, I did, I put it in parentheses, but then I said, no, do I have to get that specific, but I will ask them, and if we do, I will put it on
You put
the,
a such as,
such as.
right?
Such
Not-
as.
Not included.
Included but not
Such
limited
as,
to,
yeah.
included but not limited to, that's what I always say.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. And identify and pursue grants and other funding sources to improve current. Oh, I didn't finish my sentence. Okay, identify and pursue grants and other funding sources to improve current recreation facilities and potentially create new recreation facilities and properties. I have to word that better, but in a more grammatically correct sentence, but I hope you get the general gist.
Agreed.
Okay, good. I will fix that, I promise, okay.
Now, to play devil's advocate on that one,
Mm-hmm.
should that be recreation doing that?
Well, I think it's something, I forgot to tell you, I put for the organizations that are involved, so that's gonna be,
Both of us, right?
that's gonna be recreation and CUPOP, right, because it's publicly owned property and recreation, I'm sorry, I haven't been telling you guys that, so.
Do we have one of those for conservation, for things like removal of invasive species? And
I'm getting to that. Stop, you're killing my thunder.
you want to take conservation, then you
That's
take
it.
recreation, I thought we were done, you know?
I'm getting there. It's not in order. It doesn't make any sense. I know. I was just making notes. Okay. I should have put them all in order, but more organized. Okay. Now we've got. Wait, did I say? Okay, now this. Here's another. This is. Oh, I already said housing. We already did this. Support housing committee when appropriate with identifying potential town-owned properties that may be used to assist with the implementation of the housing plan. That was new. That's new since 2015, and I'm sure will be in here. This is from 2015. The language was examine adequacy of town facilities as emergency shelters and identify needed improvements. In 2015, that was
Assess emergency shelter options, that was on the list.
Yeah.
15.
right. So that was recreation, us and board of selectmen. I think we could certainly stay there. I mean, but I think that the fire department and the police department should be added onto that. I mean,
I don't
right?
think that's our charge. Like,
I don't either really.
we don't have any
It's not-
expertise in that.
Yeah.
So if it was.
Oh, I know. Oh, I'm sorry to
No,
interrupt
go
you.
ahead.
I think before I forget my thought, I think the reason why, if I were to try to guess why we were on there, is because we would be determining the use of a town-owned building as an emergency shelter, and changing the use. I don't know. That's my guess. That may have already been completed, by the way.
Yeah, that was on the 0 to 3 year list
Yeah.
in 2015.
But do any of us know if we have a shelter in town?
Maybe they assessed it and determined
The
that,
senior center.
maybe the assessment was there shall be none.
No, there are a lot
Looked
of
into it.
regulations.
I got my
It's just
basement,
like
that's what I got.
building a
Yeah.
shelter, you have to have a lot of regulations.
So that's my-
why
yeah.
No, I didn't know
it's
if the
on here
firehouse
and-
is built for that or something like.
I'll ask. I'm
no.
gonna
I
ask.
think the senior center was used, at least for the gym or something.
Yes,
for
I
that
believe
building.
that's.
I would hope
Lots
that's
of
Because the
the.
last time we had a
Lots of
really
bricks.
big hurricane, I remember reading that in the newsletter.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
Lots of bricks,
that's
lots
the only
of-
way I remember that.
So I hope that's already been completed, but my guess is that's probably why we were mentioned. If that's already been done, yeah, we'll take it off our list.
Okay.
Because I don't think we need to be involved.
I don't know if this is something we should add specifically, but being able to use town-owned properties to support emergency alert devices, basically sirens. I know this night I talked to Mika about having like a PA type thing across the center area. So being able to announce things across that and using town-owned properties to do that would be beneficial.
So we could say emergency shelters and communication.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I'll ask about that, okay?
Now it goes to the phones. Like if there's an emergency,
And-
there's
and
communication
if the
if you sign up.
If your phone's down.
If the cell
No.
signals are down, you want loudspeakers that will
Wow,
actually.
that's.
I'm very loud, I could just stand right in the rain and just yell. You could probably
So,
hear
I
me.
mean,
You could definitely hear me.
we were talking. I've been helping with things like trying to get the network infrastructure
Okay.
developed across the town center and like a Wi-Fi infrastructure and being able to have devices that could actually, they could do announcements from one end to the other to tell people something's happening.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that was something he had asked about specifically.
All right, now there
That's
was,
more technology, that's not property.
yeah,
Well,
that's
it's
where-
putting
yeah.
the technology on the property.
Oh, gotcha.
Right,
So I
because
just
we might
added,
want those
into
in
emergency
places
shelters and
around
communication.
the town,
I see.
not
Yep.
just in the center.
Yep.
Okay, number 12, or not that you guys have a list, but number 12 of ours, we're making progress, it's a lot. In 2015, on page 150, there was a place that said assess how the CCW site can be best used or repurposed, but I took out the specifics, which are no longer there, the pool and the building.
Clubhouse.
The clubhouse, thank you. So, I just generally placed in here, what we already discussed is assess, and we could word it better, how the CCW site can be best used or repurposed, and I put on there recreation, conservation, housing, sustainability, us, Board of Selectmen, and I put the Trail Master on there as well. All right? Okay. I could just leave it generally like that and just leave it.
Should that also include open space and conservation?
It's everybody, conservation, rec, housing, trail master, because I think the trail, sustainability, right? Everything that, within that questionnaire that went around, okay. In 2015, it's indicated, I don't have the page, I'm sorry, maybe it's 152, 150, not 152, 150 as well.
The Grove.
Yeah, examine current use of town green grounds and find appropriate site for uses such as picnics and community events. It lists CUPOP and the Board of Selectmen. One thing I want to add on this, and this is something that has actually been on my personal to-do list with CUPOP. We discussed it a couple years ago and it kind of went away because we were caught up in other items, and something that recently came up as a result of, what is the event that we have in May? Earth Day. Was that there's an issue with our ordinances regarding food trucks and things like that on our town-owned property.
Signs, food trucks. yeah,
Alcohol,
we don't really-
things like that.
We don't really
Right.
have procedures for anything.
Right, so, and that pertains to publicly owned property, and I know at one point in time that was on our own personal action agenda to look into. So if we were to keep on a general statement of examine the current uses of the town green grounds, and find appropriate sites for all these community events. If that remains, I think that what we should do, and recreation should have been on that list, and they were not, so I would say recreation should be there. And Social Library Commission, by the way, because they're the ones who have the movie nights and things like that during the summer. I think that regarding the use of town-owned property, to be able to use it for food trucks and things like that, our ordinance for that is really outdated.
Well, if it's town green, I think we shouldn't be part of it as conservation, but if it's using any town-owned
Right.
properties, then we would wanna have something to do with it too.
I will do, I mean, they said town green, that's usually where we have all of our items, all of
Really,
our
it's
events,
procedures.
but procedurally, if we were going to,
I mean, to me,
the
this
ordinance would be town-owned property.
Right.
to me, this is develop procedures for
The
the
use
food
of
truck to
publicly owned
say, I'm
property.
allowed to be here, a
Right.
resident to say, I can hold this event. Who signs off on that, like the
Board of
town?
Selectmen.
That's difficult.
Well, they have an ordinance committee, and they're looking into, this became an issue for
I think you're
Earth
talking about
Day.
two things. He's talking about who signs off on an individual permit. You're talking about who signs off on the
Oh,
procedure,
that's,
right? Because the board would have to do the
What I'm saying
procedure,
is-
but once it's in place,
right,
what
we
is
don't
that
do that,
procedure?
we don't do that.
Right. So I'm trying to back into what board should be involved, because whoever's approving it, like, it's similar to maintaining, we don't care if they approve food trucks or not. I would say it's not our job. But somebody else has to care about it if we don't. So is that, to put that all on the Board of Selectmen, I think is not the best way to do it.
Right, which is why I put in here,
So let's say the
Okay,
police
right.
department has to sign off, or the town clerk, or somebody in the functional, like, once we have a procedure, that's what it says. Let's say that's how it works.
I think it's Public
who
Works, I think. But not-
Governs, or maybe it's Public Works, that's fine.
Yeah, mhm.
But then does Public Works write the procedure? Or
No,
is that a CUPOP thing? Or is that somebody else's?
So the food trucks come at certain events, like
Right.
Earth Day.
Sure,
So who's ever organizing Earth Day is organizing the food trucks, right?
but who writes the procedure for them to allow food trucks?
the ordinance
That's
committee will write the procedure, and it's actually gonna be an ordinance, and the way that our ordinance is written now is very, it's not good. We're not up to date as the other towns are, right, in terms of requirements and things like that, and as a result, a lot of people can't come here for our events for food trucks. I know this was a problem in May because we're very restrictive in terms of who can come here or not. I know the first selectman's office was really looking into it because it was a big problem when they have events like that. And one of the things in 2015 was for CUPOP was charged on this 2015 POCD with the Board of Selectmen to find areas or the town green, and sites for community events and things like that. So I don't know, if you wanted to take that off, we can. But if we keep it, I think if we're gonna do that and find areas other than the town green to have community events potentially, of publicly owned property, obviously, then we should add in there that we will be the ones who can, make a recommendation to the ordinance committee about, after we do some research around what surrounding towns do in terms of their requirements for food trucks and things like that. Because that is something that they are currently looking at.
Yeah, I'm trying to decide, should we be involved in this at all, or should we sort of
Right.
own it, right? Like that, I mean, you could talk me either way. I don't know.
I mean, I think it's like a researching of what other surrounding towns do, like Bethany, Orange, Hamden.
I just still keep tying it back to the event. And so how are we gonna be informed of the event where there's a food truck?
No,
How-
this is not on an event by event basis. We're talking about how do we
General
set
policy.
the rules that the people holding the event need to follow
Right,
eventually.
the
So like,
ordinance.
someone submits an application, we don't see that, but it's what should have to be on their
So,
application.
yeah, let's talk through an example. So right now at Peace Park, people have birthdays there. Nobody's pulling permits for that. What if a food truck wants to come? The ice cream guy just shows up. I don't know if he's allowed to, I assume so.
Now, there's an application process.
No, but what if I just wanna have a pizza truck there? Should CUPOP say whether that's allowed or not?
I
No.
think so.
Okay.
Now,
so
that feels
we
more
answered
like
that.
the cutting the lawn at the soccer field that
Yep, I
decided we
agree.
should have a soccer
Right.
field.
So then what role does
I
CUPOP
would
actually play
actually
in
say
this?
CUPOP should probably say across all community-owned properties.
Right.
Here's the types of things that we would recommend be allowed, not what should be allowed or not, but we recommend,
Right.
food trucks should be allowed in this type of property, but not this type of
So
property.
if it's not CUPOP saying what's allowed, what's not specific to properties, who is it? Is it ordinances?
No, so we don't say anything. We make a recommendation to the ordinance committee, and they make the ultimate decision as what they're going to. The ordinance committee is comprised of Board of Selectmen members. So I should probably explain that first. The ordinance committee is comprised of Board of Selectmen members. So they meet regularly. I don't know what their actual meeting schedule is. And then they will take up situations regarding, obviously, ordinances, right? So if there's a recommendation to either implement a new ordinance, create changes to another ordinance, and they will listen to a recommendation. They will discuss, just like we do, it's another committee, and then they will make a recommendation, yes or no, to the Board of Selectmen. So after that's done, we're not involved at all. So whatever they decide to do, they decide to do. We can make a recommendation that we feel that when you're dealing with the use of town-owned property, when you're using town-owned property for whatever it is, whether we want to get involved in private events or just town events, we decide, right? This is what we think should be the requirements for a food truck, for example. And then we can make the
Examples
recommendation.
being, we should probably not allowed to have food trucks in properties that don't have bathroom facilities nearby. Right, because literally you have this problem of people.
Well, that would be nothing on town green then.
Well, no, but you have the public buildings that do have bathrooms.
I think the issue with the town, I'll tell you what the issue is. I don't want to get in data with town with food trucks. I just want to say that one of the issues with Woodbridge is that the requirements that we have are requirements that cost a lot of money for the owners of the food trucks to come into this town versus any other town. And therefore, when it came to light again, when we had the event in May, and a lot of people could not come because it was very expensive. It was a big running around situation to try to get them here. Without having to pay a lot of money to come here to Woodbridge. And I've heard from people when I've tried to plan events here that that is accurate. And I have looked at our ordinance and it is very
Why is it?
costly.
Why? Where is it?
It's old.
It's old.
Oh,
Probably insurance and stuff like that are required in ways that are not.
So to answer your question, I don't know who's going to do it. An ordinance may do it on their own, but I don't think it would hurt if we, said, listen,
I don't
this is
mind having
town
a
owned
food
property
reserve.
and
It's
this is
fine.
what we think. And if we can't come to an agreement, then we don't. But
Well, also imagine somebody wanted to, let's say the Darling House became a popular place to go. We go, oh, we might need to add bathrooms there. We're now going to allow food trucks. We're not, so we may want to have, and I'm not saying that's the case. I know that's it's probably not the right property for that, but
I'm
we
just talking about
probably
the
want to have our
green.
fingers in it.
And the
Give
green.
a piece
too.
the same
Well,
way,
right,
right?
exactly.
So my point about the bathrooms and stuff is more about, we could actually identify, here are properties that have bathroom facilities. So when someone comes and says, we're gonna allow food trucks that need, there need to be a certain number of bathrooms available with this many feet, we've provided the information because we know about the public facilities on these community-owned
Sure.
properties. So I think that's where our
And we could discuss it in what details, but if that's something you want to remain on our list, and we're discussing use of town green and any other publicly owned properties in terms of community events, if you want to keep it there as it was for 2015, and we can certainly do that. And put that on our action
I
item.
don't think we should limit it to the green though, it should be for all.
Right, yeah, and then we can list, and then I just had mentioned that in addition to that, we should put specifically discussing ordinances regarding, the food trucks. Now, they may take it off, and then we don't do it at all. But this is just a recommendation, okay? Is everybody good with that? Okay. All right, 2015, I'm gonna have to go to Patty for the page, because I didn't write it down. Prioritize accessibility upgrades to important public facilities, including recreational areas. Now, obviously, that is something that we were asked to be involved in before, something that we're starting to get involved with again, and something I've been wanting to do for a long time. And it lists Public Works, CUPOP, Board of Selectmen, but we should also include, in my opinion, Recreation and Human Services.
I think it's 151.
Okay, so are we good with that?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. I don't think we need to put this because I believe this is part of the Greenway plan. And I could just add this language to the support Conservation Commission when appropriate for implementation of the Conservation Commission Greenway plan. I put support when appropriate Conservation Commission Trail Master with identifying town-owned property that can assist in creating a continuous trail system in Woodbridge. I can just add that language to the one I mentioned earlier with the Greenway plan. Okay, does that sound like a plan? Put this in number 15.
I don't know if I don't wanna jump ahead, but.
You jump ahead.
In looking at like the potential acquisition of new properties, is there an existing process? Does someone sit there and look at what new properties come on the market and go, oh, we want that one? How do those things happen?
Okay, so in a short answer, and we can go over this at another meeting, but in a short answer, any commission or committee in town's in our charge, any commission or committee in town that would like to acquire property should be technically, making the recommendation to CUPOP, I can't speak, CUPOP, and then subsequently make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. They will also, on their own, make that recommendation to the Board of Selectmen as well, okay? So it'll be coming from two different areas for the acquisition of property.
That's not something that we.
But no, and then
preemptively
it goes
do.
to Board of Selectmen, and there's a process that they have to follow
Mm-hmm.
in order to do that. Of course, as I found out researching, going down the rabbit hole of Enoch that wasn't necessarily followed at the time. When it should go through TPZ, and there should be some kind of a town vote on it, and at this particular point there was a resolution. So to answer your question, we don't get involved in that, thank God. So we just have to look at it to determine whether or not that's something that we would support, which actually you're probably going to get your answer soon, because it looks like we may be looking at Litchfield Turnpike at some point as a potential for open space. Okay? All right. In 2015, Patty encouraged town historian and conservation commission to create walking maps to historic structures. Now, that is exactly how it was worded in 2015, and it lists conservation. Now,
Is that
and the historic committee,
Is that historic structures on community-owned properties or any historic structure?
anywhere. So I think we should kind of, not that I want to squeeze ourselves in here, but it kind of fits in with what I had indicated earlier with, supporting them in terms of, providing them information with properties as we, go through our process. So, I mean, I would be fine. I don't know if this was ever done. Sharon, did you guys ever make a walking map of historic structures in Woodbridge?
Well, I didn't even see it as one of our things, but that's sort of what the D grant is gonna be doing. It's gonna be marking 10 different historic places.
Okay.
So which one is that? Tell me.
So I don't know, but I see something about on page 150, maintain and enhance historic and rural character.
No, it's down there somewhere.
I don't know.
It's in. I'll find it later and I'll give it to you. Here it is, page 151. Encourage town historian and conservation commission to create walking maps to historic structures. So I would like
Doing
to.
it without even knowing it.
So I mean, was going to add it to our list only because it kind of combines what I said earlier about working with, the Historic Society.
Well, because I think it's just notifying people. It's not actually changing the use or doing anything specific.
And I was because we put in there earlier that we were gonna inform the Historic Society of information that we obtain during our review. So that's somewhere up here, didn't I? That's my phone up. It was up here. Support Historic Society when appropriate with identification of town and property with historic significance, when I had said that.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of falls with this too, because then we can tell them the information, and then if you want to create a walking map to all of them, then that would be great, right? So I don't think it necessarily has to be a walking map. In fact, I don't know.
I don't understand.
I don't understand what that is.
That's a maintenance kind of thing, isn't it? To create a walking map.
It's more the
Why are we on
identification
that?
of the historically
Why
significant
are you?
properties.
Do you know
Yeah,
what?
but the historians would do that. You guys don't know about that.
Yeah.
Well,
Why,
it's because it's listed as a subset of the trails item. So
Yeah.
I don't think
manage and improve town trails.
so I don't know that it was a lot of thought necessarily went into.
Did you know that conservation was on that?
I've been reading them in general, no, but that's exactly what we're actually going
You're
to do.
doing, yeah.
So I thought it
So
was
I
a new
mean,
idea.
That's old, isn't it?
yeah, I know it's as old as 2015. So I don't know. I mean, I think we could just leave
'cause
it
we haven't
as
been part of. You haven't been part of us.
no.
I just don't want to add cumbersomeness if we need to pass it by you and.
No. Yeah, no. I don't want you to do that either. We have enough on our plate. I'm just going to keep it as what I indicated earlier. Support the Historic Society when appropriate with identification of town-owned property with
Yeah.
historic significance.
I mean, we're more than willing to fill you in, and if you have ideas of
Yeah,
historic
I'm gonna
things.
park our off. Okay. Oh, here it is. Okay. Support sustainability committee and public works in their sustainability goals of town-owned facilities. This is very wordy. By identifying town-owned facilities that are in need of comprehensive energy audits and energy efficient plans. In the 2015, it states, conduct a municipal energy audit of major town buildings to identify cost-effective upgrades that can save taxpayer money. That's what it says in 2015. Now, that's kind of what we're doing with members of sustainability. So I'm trying to think of a good way to word that we are, without sounding really wordy.
Well, you know, you might wanna look at that Ridgefield one, because they have specific things of fuel efficiency or
Oh, they do?
decreasing carbon footprint
Okay.
and different stuff, so you might be able to insert language that upgrades it and is more specific.
Okay, I'll do that. Because that is something that we're doing right now. So just, and by the way, our role is just identifying the buildings and what buildings need to be looked at. We don't get involved with how to do it because that is not our expertise. But that we're supporting, see the word support, okay. And then it follows, it says develop energy, sustainability, performance standards for, this was actually in 2015, I think. Develop energy, sustainability, performance standards for future municipal buildings based on a rating system. We should probably remain on that because we were on that with us. It was us, Board of Selectmen, and ETF, which must have been a task force that they had at some point, but now it's a sustainability committee. We should also add in there not future, but add in future and current municipal buildings because that's definitely what we're doing right now. Okay. And I'll look at the Ridgefield one to see if there's any other language that we need to add in there, and I'll bring that to the meeting. Support the Board of Selectmen and Sustainability Committee by identifying town-owned property, potentially appropriate for the location of sustainable energy sources. That was the issue with solar, right, at the transfer station and places like that.
Can we modify it a little, just not just sources, but storage as well? Because sources implies production, storage is also, is
Good
different.
point.
Done, okay. This is okay here. This was in 2015. I'm gonna go to Patty again on this one. Provide public notices, which I don't think we do. Provide public notices on town ball fields and recreational facilities during air quality advisories and ozone, I don't think this is a word, exceedance days.
Where is it? 151.
Why would
Yeah,
you
page
be on that?
150.
Yeah, that to me is
That's a
much
maintenance thing.
more of a maintenance thing.
Well,
That,
Rex,
we
Rex
were
is
on
that.
it was rec and
Yeah.
CUPOP. It should be public works and rec, right? Let me
Or
take-
police, or
Yeah, I mean, rec
services,
makes
like,
sense
that
because
depends
we're
on-
talking about-
Ambulances, whatever.
No, it depends on.
We're
the
gonna
thing.
run down and like nail something on the door and be like.
Yeah,
Well-
I mean, I suppose on some level, we could have been involved in the sense of identifying which properties in the town are appropriate to put these on, these warning systems, but it seems like they've been identified as
All the fields and
the
the ball
fields,
fields and
which
yeah,
presumably are within the jurisdiction of rec.
right, alright, so I'm gonna take us off of that and I'm gonna, that should be rec and, I
But
think
you
public
said
works.
that, you said that was in 2015, I don't see that.
That was in 2015.
151, the last part of the page.
Patty, come on Patty.
Well, you're going back.
I know, I told you, it's not any particular order.
Right, fourth from the
All over
bottom.
place, and I'm tired.
Engage residents in protecting air and water, header,
Fourth from the bottom.
Gotcha.
one of the subheaders, I guess.
And then, do you have the next one too?
I'm curious if there's a way we could take
Coordinate.
that one and what I brought up before about
Coordinate
the
response, yeah.
emergency alerts.
Coordinate
And
and host.
that's basically the same thing, like if we had the ability to have displays that both could be air quality issue, and, whatever, there's a
Oh, as a
storm
town,
coming.
yes. As
But now-
CUPOP, I don't think that's us.
But putting those on the publicly owned properties at the right places around the town, we can identify those properties and make sure there are the appropriate infrastructure to get the messages to those things. But I think it sort of is the same thing. One is, emergency announcement audio, and one is emergency announcement video.
Well, that should be the emergency, don't we have an emergency services committee? I feel like we do. Isn't it comprised of doctors and things
Too
like
many
that? I feel like we have that.
Isn't that the human
May have made
health,
that up.
human health stuff?
I don't know.
But
Okay,
I mean, it's not just for, not just for air quality, but for things like, there's a storm coming, right? Seek shelter, tornado.
Well, I would hope that, somebody in this town, like the police department or the fire department or public works and those guys, I mean, that would be hopefully something that they're
Right,
familiar
but
with.
where do those messages go? We don't have a town system to distribute them. Yes, you can do a cellular alert, but not if the cell towers are down.
I don't think that's our job though to do that, right? I mean,
It's, I'm just saying it's the
yeah.
town's job, and
Yeah.
our job is to identify properties that could be good places for those things.
Probably all of them, right?
Well, not, off in a trail somewhere, but.
Well, yeah. But not in the middle of the woods, that probably won't work.
But I would still put that on rec, right?
Yeah.
And
But I
any
think we should be,
recreation, any
Any
property
recreational
they're
facility
managing,
should have that.
if they wanna come, if they need help with that, that's fine, but I think I would still put that on them.
Rec and public works, that's what I put.
Yeah,
Okay.
we don't worry about the
Um,
slides,
yeah.
right? That kind of thing.
That's their, yeah. All right, then the next one is, and you know what page it is. What page is it? 151?
It's right next to it, yeah.
Okay, good. Coordinate or host events such as, what workshop? Because I totally have a typo here.
Educational.
Thank you, educational workshop, hikes and cleanup events at Woodbridge Water Resources. I don't know if we need to be involved in that. I think that's more of a conservation board of
Yeah, I think we
selectmen
should be
thing.
added to that.
Yeah, I don't know why we are.
No, I would think
But
it
we
would be.
did them in the past. We did invasives, we did ticks, we had regional water do water testing.
We as a town, 100%,
No,
should
CUPOP
CUPOP, but
hosted
to
it.
me, that's not.
What
That's
we
what we
should do.
did though.
Yeah.
We've done that in the past.
Well, this is to educational workshop hikes and cleanup events at Woodbridge's water resource.
No, it's the first discussion we had. We don't maintain trails. We
Right.
might
Yeah,
protect the land
Yeah.
or declare the land, and then somebody else puts them on there and they
Yeah.
maintain them.
Yeah.
That's, to me, that's the,
that's what they, yeah. I mean, I know we did that in the past, but I
Yeah.
think we have to focus on what we're supposed to do, which is a lot, as I find out. But I don't know, what do you guys think? I mean, you guys discussed them on yourselves.
The invasives thing was a big thing, like we talked about that for a long
I
time.
mean,
That's a
conservation
conservation
definitely
thing.
needs to be on there. I don't know why you aren't on there and we are. I think
Which
you
one
should
was
be on
that?
that.
Yeah. Oh, I
Coordinate or
added those,
host
yes.
events such as, I don't know why I
Yeah.
put educational workshops, hikes and cleanup events at Woodbridge's water resources.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know why you're
Well, I
not on
think
there, and
maybe-
you should be on
I
there.
think we're gonna do a push on invasives, and maybe there's a place in there where you could support town-owned land being have in natural,
It's coming.
okay, good.
I think it is. I put it on there, I think.
Because I think that would be a really good idea for town.
I have it here, I got it. We're on the
Great.
same page, look at us, okay. So I don't know, what do you guys think about that? It kind of goes with the trail maintenance, that we probably should move on from that
Yeah, I
at
don't
this
think
point, yeah.
event hosting is really.
shouldn't be Board of Selectmen only, but I don't think CUPOP is up there.
Conservation has to be on there for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
And if it's water resources, wouldn't inland wetlands be involved in that too?
They're more permitting, but you can
Okay.
mention it.
Yeah,
I mean, certainly they care about water quality.
I hope.
Public
Okay.
Works too.
Who?
But I'm just, never mind, I don't think it's good.
Okay, alright. All right, here's another one. Okay, so this, I don't know how to word. So I'm just gonna throw this out there. This has to do with the potential of the relocation of the Woodbridge Police Department. I put on here, I don't know how to word this, but support the decision or support, whatever you want to say, decision, whatever, on the use of the center school building after Woodbridge, Woodbridge daycare is leaving, by the way. Does everybody know that? They're leaving that building.
Officially.
And they're going across the street, I believe. So, support the decision on the use of the center school building after Woodbridge daycare exits, and should the Woodbridge Police Department relocate. I know there's a better way to say that. I was writing these very quickly. I'm gonna tell you why I think it needs to be specific. And I don't know if we should just generally say, to somehow support the decision on the use of the center school building and leave it at that, for the same reasons that we have to be specific about the police department potentially being relocated, should they get grants eventually to reconfigure the center school. They're going to have that listed on here, if that were to ever happen. Now, we're not saying it's gonna happen, but I'm just saying, should this happen? Do you know what I mean? What do you think?
Generally, I agree.
I mean, it is a use of a building.
Yeah, I think
Um,
I'm not saying we shouldn't try to come up with a good formulation,
Yeah.
but like I wouldn't focus too much on the wording, because the way that it was laid out in 2015, it was sort of like, here's all the things the town wants to do, and here's the list of groups that are working on them. So whether we call it support or assist or whatever, it's not gonna get framed like that in the final, it's just gonna say do, and then underneath it, it's gonna say the groups involved. So like, our role might be a support role for one thing versus a lead role for another thing, but like, it's probably not gonna be listed that way in the end, but in terms of like what the thing is here.
Maybe we don't list it because we're gonna be involved anyway, because it's a publicly owned property, so
Right,
they're gonna
but-
ask us to review.
But to
the
your point about
But it
the benefit of
needs to be there.
specificity,
Yeah.
having center building, future
Future use of Pulse Center
future
building.
use or something
Yeah.
like that might be appropriate. And I think that was actually one of the,
When are they moving out?
I don't know, I mean, I heard that they were leaving and potentially going across the street,
Right, they were
so,
talking about that for years.
forever, so I don't know if it's really happening or not, but
I think it has to be renovated, so it's gonna take a while.
take a while, right, so
If nothing
yeah.
started, then it's not gonna
Has
happen
it started
soon.
yet? Does
Yeah,
anybody
no.
know?
Cause that building, to move them, to go into that building, cause they actually, well, a whole other thing, I walked it with them, just,
Oh, you
they
did?
asked me to just help, like, cause they know what I do, so I walked it with them and,
Needs a lot of work.
Yeah, so
Right,
that's why I was
so-
surprised that,
If it goes,
Uh,
if it goes and it leaves, and if they leave, if it goes, I'm tired, can you tell? If they eventually relocate, right, where we'd have that space that's empty, and let's say, they decide not to spend the exorbitant amount of money to renew the police permit, they move them somewhere else, what do we do? To your point, which you brought up the other meeting, what do we do with this giant building? Now, obviously, we would be involved in that decision and making a recommendation of the use. I just like to put it here for all the reasons we said, right, in case, and just maybe, I'm sure they may already have it on there, so just make sure that our name is attached to it, I guess, is what I'm saying. I'm
Well-
sure it'll already be in the POCD somewhere, it has to be, right?
I mean, usually it's driven by a need-based proposal, and then that's when they would come to us and say, this is our need,
Or we just review it, like we do everything else, and see what everybody needs, I don't know.
Right.
But I'm sure they'll
Here
come
the
to us
needs,
and ask
yeah.
us, they're gonna come
For
and ask us
consideration.
anyway, when they get there. And that may not be in the next 10 years, who knows, but
Right.
we'll leave it there. I'll word it probably more generally, right? The future use of the.
yeah,
of
and
the
I think
seniors-
it was
of
on the last
center.
plan.
So put
Yeah.
parentheses, police department,
Yeah.
social,
center.
whatever. Give
Okay.
us through suggestions.
Where the future word, future use of, okay.
And actually, CUPOP walked the old daycare, years ago, a long, long time ago, more than 5 years ago, that's when they started talking about moving.
Oh, really? My
Yeah,
kids
so
went
that-
there, so I used to
You
be
said
there.
across the street to what?
The church, right?
The church.
The church.
Right.
To the, yep.
Like the basement of the church?
The
that area?
rectory.
The rectory.
Yes, the 2 floors, yeah.
Yeah, I don't mean the basement, it's just, right, it's under the
Right.
church. But like around back.
There's an entrance there, but then you go
Yes.
upstairs
Yep,
as soon as you go outside.
Okay.
yeah, they were gonna occupy both
Cool.
floors.
I generally put in here support, I like that word, support when appropriate. The goals of the EDC, I left it in there because we've already kind of started touching the EDC plan in terms of continuity between the downtown, or I think we're calling it the village now, the village area and other areas of town. We've already touched upon the trail system that potentially is behind the bikes and all of that. So I'm just generally putting it there, so wherever they want to fit us in for that, we could do that.
Sorry for.
Mm-hmm.
Is there in like economic development stuff any idea around the use of community-owned properties for bringing in retail, like putting a coffee shop somewhere up here?
We haven't even, there's supposed to
I wanna
be,
do
there's
it.
supposed to be a coffee.
Like we might have this building that.
Well,
Right in
there's
the middle
going
of
to be, there's going to be a coffee shop, in the
Community
the community center, which is the old firehouse.
But there's no kitchen.
But there's no kitchen, so it's gonna be, which is too bad, because really I wish
Just
there was a
community
kitchen, because that would have been a great opportunity. That's what I would have voted for, but I wasn't asked
We have
for
all
my
these other
opinion.
properties around here, maybe we can.
Yeah.
No,
But that's not, but with that could be a goal of EDC, right? So like, that's why I'm leaving in there generally, not just limiting, I shouldn't just limit it to the village, but I'm just giving an example. We've been already asked about, because we do own some properties down in that area.
So a model
That's
for that,
Selden.
if you've ever been to Weston,
So I grew up in Stony Brook,
okay.
and Stony Brook
So-
literally is a developed colonial village built in 1950,
Right.
with all retail and post office. and
Yeah,
stuff
so
like
Weston has, there are 3 schools on one road, drops out to a grocery store, a deli, a pharmacy, right? So that they all look like they belong, right? It's a pharmacy with a little tiny sign, right? So that idea is, I think a lot of people are thinking that's a good idea. So
that.
Yeah.
whether that is country club or the old building that is now vacant, or now it's starting a little bit with this community.
Or maybe if
Or
we're
a
building
new
a
one.
$35 million police department that is wrapped by retail.
Right. Well, let's not get over. Okay. All right, so that will fall under support when appropriate the goals of EDC.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
There's ideas.
We already talked about the section which was on page 137, which is the first thing I said, which is review the proposals for development. We've already done that, so we're going to reword it in the manner that we already talked about. I'm going to say, see, first page on the country club. Okay. Now we're getting to housing, right? So they specifically, to your point, specifically indicated housing. They said in 2015 on page 138, because I did put the page numbers here, encourage an increase in the supply of starter homes and housing appropriate for young professionals. If that language remains, I still would connect that to what we said, which was supporting, the needs of the housing committee and implementing the report. So I still would say that we should be added to that because we were not added to that before. The next one on page 138 stated expand the town's small inventory of age-restricted housing to provide older residents with more local housing options for which there is a distinct need. TPZ was only on that. I would, again, for the reasons stated on the first page, ask for us to be involved in that with the language I indicated on the first page, as well as the housing committee, right? Because we did not have one before. Next on page 140, promote local businesses. And this gets to this other issue. Promote local businesses, natural assets and features, and seasonal events to the region. Now, in 2015, they only had EDC. And now, while I don't feel, to get to your point of we don't mow grass and maintain trails, however, there are a lot of publicly owned properties and natural assets, which again, I think that conservation, recreation, the Historical Society, in addition to EDC, and potentially us should be involved only for the purposes of our natural assets being, for example, if we ever were able to get on our trails, a nice mountain biking race like they do in other towns, right? And we have a business here in town that would 1000% support that, the bike shop down in the village. That would be a good example of us becoming involved because the use of publicly owned property for particular, that's a new use, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, having some kind of, so we'd get involved in that. So I was going to ask for us to be added to that in addition to these other committees and commissions. Just initially, we're not dealing with permits or anything. We're just going to give our 2 cents on that. All right.
Just a quick question.
Sure.
They describe on this thing.
You've been so quiet tonight.
The lead agency, right? I mean, is there a risk of adding us to these things where we're in the support role, but it's listed in like lead agency? You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't want us to for some of these things. I feel like if we're listed as the lead agency, it sort of implies a certain amount of responsibility. Then maybe
Are we able
don't
to
really-
modify the format so that the lead agency can be called out separate from the supporting agencies?
That's not a question I can answer. I don't get paid the big
Can we,
bucks to make those
can we
decisions.
provide that feedback to the group?
Yeah, I mean, we could say lead agency and supporting role, sure. And then everybody could fight it out as to who's going to be a leading agency and who's a supporting role, right? So I think we said supporting 5,000 times in here, so I think it's kind of obvious. It's something we will be the lead on, which is obviously, making the recommendations to the board of selectmen and reviewing the properties and all the town-owned properties, for all that. But in terms of some of these other things, a lot of us could be supporting, and some of us could share leading too.
That was, I was starting to count the amount of times we're supporting someone else. Mm-hmm. My worry is they don't actually write that, and they just put us in the box with whatever goal they're trying to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
which then eliminates your whole plan of not being involved in everything. So I think that's where you're getting at. There's a risk there where they sort of take the easy road, don't list a second action, and then we're put in the first action, and then we
Right.
are tagged on
I
almost
mean,
everything.
I'm not concerned that they'll give us the
These guys
lead.
are- yeah, that's gonna happen.
That's not
Yeah, like,
good.
I don't think that's not, I don't think they're going to give us the lead in creating a housing plan for the town of Woodbridge, right? I mean, I think they're gonna know that we are a supporting role in that, and I'm gonna ask them to put the specific language as to what it is that we are doing, which is identifying potential, publicly owned properties, right? So we could certainly talk to them about that. I don't know if they're gonna do it the same way. To Sharon's point, we should look at the Ridgefield plan and the
No.
other plans to see how they
I'm all
lay it
good.
out. Yeah.
But if we don't get an approval round of this, and they don't, and they just add us to everything instead of putting a secondary.
I don't get the
Line
impression
items.
people are trying to cede power to
No, not
conservation
seed power, but
Yeah.
or cede responsibility.
no, I just mean, instead of having 4 goals, you have 1 and you just put everybody on it.
Yeah,
I can
That's
see
what
that
that's what
happening.
they do.
they may do that when
Don't let me do that. And it doesn't mean that we're gonna be taking the role. I mean,
But that, to me, that muddies the water of this whole process, right? Because then who's in charge?
I mean, it certainly would be better if the format were set up, where appropriate to be like, this is
Fully
the
agree.
group that should be leading it and these ones should be involved. But even if it doesn't, if they're not convinced to do it that way or they're not interested in doing it that way, the responsibility that can be foisted on us is limited by the charter of, what
yeah,
our
right,
charges,
charge,
right? Like,
yeah.
they could put out a report that says that we are,
It just
rezoning the whole town,
Hurts
but
me
guess
inside.
what? We don't have the power to do that.
Right,
So
exactly.
it can't
So we'll
happen.
be like, sorry, we can't do it. It's not our charge.
Not this week.
Sorry, I know.
it hurts me inside if we go, oh, this is what we wanted to say, and they go, no, we're just clumping it all together.
Well, guess
And then
what?
putting
I have
everybody
bad news for you. That may be happening. So.
But I think that they'll give us an initial version
Yeah.
of it and we'll say, well, be clear that we're not the lead agency.
Right, exactly.
Sure.
Or
I'm
yeah.
just thinking that you have some room to determine how they spread it so that you're not getting
But
upset.
I have a feeling it's going to just list all 4 of us on something, and then it's for all of us to figure out how it's going to work.
That makes
But that's probably
But
what's
I
going to
think
happen.
also because at least in our charter, I think in yours, the board of select, we're just an advisory committee, so
Right.
the buck stops with the board of selectmen no
Right.
matter what
Sure.
we do.
Yeah. Right.
Oh, fully agree.
Okay. This was kind of written in 141. I think I may have reworded it, but support and pursue opportunities to enhance continuity between the village and I may have reworded it and town-owned properties such as trails and open space. Did I reword that? I think I did.
There is one that related to that about.
Okay, so I changed it to what we were just discussing. I know that there was discussion about the properties that we own in Selden, which is publicly owned properties, the property behind it, which is that park, and things like that. So we're just, again, a supporting role, supporting the pursuit of opportunities to enhance continuity between the village and town-owned property, such as trails and open space. So that would be definitely within our charge. And on page 142, I have a page, on page 142, it indicated build stairs, and actually Sharon, you can tell me this, build stairs, switchback trails, or other means of ascending from Amity Road near Bradley Road to the existing Naugatuck Trail west of the village area.
Now, there's a specific one that hasn't happened, and lots of people have looked at it. It's not, I haven't actually.
Is it the one
This is
behind the
what I
bike
emailed.
shop, right? This is
Well,
exactly
no,
the
it's
one.
not behind the bike.
Yeah.
I think it's
So-
more behind.
So it's a blue trail it's behind Stop and Shop, the back
Oh.
corner of Stop and Shop.
Oh,
It
yeah,
comes
yeah,
up,
yeah, yeah,
it's-
yeah.
That starts in New
I
Haven.
think-
There's actually some homeless encampments on it right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's kind of a blue trail that's forgotten to time. And then once you get up above, there's some Woodbridge trails
I
out
actually
there.
think this one, I don't know about that one, but
Okay.
I've heard about it. But I think this is between where the trailer place was and
Yeah,
Wells Fargo Bank.
Oh, that
There's
one's
a whole-
there. Yeah, it's
Yeah, but
it's
I
all,
think they're thinking of making it more, I mean, now it's like,
it's super eroded.
right, and not safe. I think
Oh,
they
that
were
one's going
thinking
this
of
way. So there's
trying
another
to-
one that comes this way. It's in New Haven technically.
So,
Yeah, so I don't think that would be.
yeah, so you know
Right
what,
along
so basically, so
But it's
since
just- it's not even
2015
there.
is still a want item, I guess, on the
Yeah.
POC, okay. So for now, what I was gonna leave it on here, because, but what I think we should do is they only had EDC and the planner on there, and they didn't have conservation, they didn't have the trail master, they didn't have, you know, CUPOP, cause is that a publicly
The
owned?
building stairs, it was
No, it's the build stairs,
think
switchback
there's
trails, or
an
other
easement
means of
Board of
ascending.
Selectmen, Public Works and Recreation.
Oh, really? Where the heck do I have EDC?
No, that's the next one, potential sites. And they talk about EDC and planner this.
So you-
Like I can see that.
Oh, right.
Sorry. Board of Selectmen, oh yeah, and recreation. Okay, so they didn't have recreation, okay. So I think, not to put more on your plate, but I think that, you know, obviously it's a continuity piece, right? It's trying
So
to
the trail's there,
get the,
that one it's
but what
talking
needs
about.
to be worked
It's an
on. Oh, is that a
ugly-
maintenance thing though?
It's maintenance, I don't think we should be involved,
Yeah,
but that was
based
just
on
an ugly trail.
The way it was assigned last time around, it sounds like they at least thought they had made a decision. We're gonna put some kind of improvement in here to make this more accessible. So they put it into the charge of the people that would actually implement that if it were to be done, and, you know, guess it fell off the priority list.
It's just
but-
super eroded, because the
Right,
rain.
but like,
But it does
My
connect.
hunch is that was probably put in like you putting in the police department to get money for a specific grant to
do it.
a specific
I
thing.
didn't get it.
And I don't think anyone, maybe people did it, I know people talked about it on, the Woodbridge Land Trust, but I don't know much about it, but it's a pretty narrow area and it's a curious idea. And, I mean, I think it could stay in there, but I don't think it's gonna be a
So
top
the trail
priority
itself
for anybody.
It's pretty steep, you could switch back it, but
I don't
the
think they have
entrance
a lot
point
of-
is just on a parking lot. Like, it's just sort of like this little hill that's between the bank, and I think it's a bank and the trailer place.
Does it connect to anything, any town owned property?
No.
Yeah, it's town owned all above that. But no, the dump out point, there's no, like, usually it's a park, and everybody parks there.
What's in the
and-
village?
Yeah, but it's not a good spot,
yeah, if,
You'd laugh
where it
if
is,
you
it's
were
on,
there.
it's not, it's on,
It's
where
a
you're trying to.
scramble up a hill.
Yeah, it's on the hill going up Inman Road, right? It's not down where it's flat and
I mean,
there's
someone
Selden.
could do a huge amount of money and build a beautiful staircase up to wherever they wanna go, but it's gonna be a big project to make it
But
accessible
not one
and
that we
safe.
need to be involved in. That sounds like a maintenance issue, right?
correct.
I
I don't
don't
think our
think we
board
need
should
to
be
be
on that.
involved.
It's a great project, but
Okay. We will cross that off.
Mm-hmm.
All right. All right, this is what we were talking about just about 10 minutes ago now, I think it was. I put in here, beautify and clear town-owned open space lands from invasives and identify uses for open space. Now, this is, I want to word this correctly, such as parks, agricultural use, recreation, and identify something to pursue grants and other funding sources to support this action.
I think,
So, this is what I'm thinking. So, I put this in here because the open space lands, right? So, for example, we discussed with Jason, right, the agricultural piece on Racebrook, right? So, I was going to keep this in here, and I'll tell you why. Because we're trying to get a grant for
I don't know.
Oh, I think I made this one.
Oh.
This is a new one. It's, so I'm gonna word it differently, but just a general, just to beautify, and clear town-owned space, owned open space lands when appropriate from invasives and identify uses for open space such as parks, when, obviously when appropriate, such as parks, agricultural use, recreation, and identify and pursue grants and other funding sources to support this action. Now, obviously, not all open space is going, this could be done. Obviously, there's invasives on a lot that we probably will never be able to touch all of them, right? Obviously, not all open spaces will be parks. Obviously, not all open spaces will be agricultural use, right? And not all will be recreation. But we know we have one that's open now that was open space for recreation use. We know we have one that was the agriculture one that we discussed on Racebrook, so it will come up at some point. And I want to put it in here for grant purposes so that it's on the radar should we find something that we want to utilize like Racebrook for agriculture, we can get that grant. Yes,
I have a suggestion that you make the invasive part a separate part
okay,
and have it standalone.
have it
Because
standalone,
we're
okay.
gonna put that in, and if you're emphasizing it and we're emphasizing it,
We can
it
put it,
adds
okay.
to our chances of it getting in
Is
there,
that-
and also.
Are you suggesting this is
important
tagged on us?
No. We're not gonna beautify it and do all that,
You're
but
just giving your endorsement.
we're giving
for
our
it.
endorsement for it because I think, I mean, okay, I don't know how to properly word this, so I don't know if I'm being articulate, it's been a long day, but, for example, I think Racebrook is a perfect, I'll put invasive separately and we could talk about your language, by the way, so I wrote that down here and see, so we put that together. In terms of properties that we're going to consistently be reviewing, there's going to be properties. We have one that was open space for recreational use. It has not been used for recreational use. We don't know if it can be used for recreational use, but if it can be, that's something that we're going to want to, obviously look at after we hear from recreation. They come to our meeting and talk to us about it, right? Maybe there's something they need, right? That's something that we would get involved in because we're determining, the use of a publicly owned property. Racebrook with Jason, where it used to be a farm, right, but a lot of it's wet now, and there's a potential eventually down the road to connect that to the current trails, right, in addition to farm, because it would be, we cleared of invasives, right, that was one of the plans, and then, farm the 2 acres of it, right, and leave the rest for the wetlands. That's something else that we would get involved in, because it would then be utilized as an agricultural property with potential for trail, additions to the trail system, right? So I know I'm not right. I did not articulate myself very well in that number, but that's pretty much where I'm going with that, which is why I think we should keep it in there, because then we have it kind of earmarked in there. So should we want to, or identify, or Dave finds a grant, or you find a grant, whatever, for these items, we can point to it in our action and say, see, it's right here. This is something that we wanted to do. Does that make sense? I'll say it better. I'll articulate myself.
Yeah, dumb it down.
I'll dumb it down, yes.
No, I get it. No, that sounds good.
Okay. Okay. We're almost done. All right. So in our charge, which you kind of touched upon a little bit, is that we, for the acquisition of town-owned properties, we do get involved in that. One thing I wanted to keep in here, because we have been discussing Litchfield specifically as a potential acquisition for open space, I wanted to somehow identify that in here so that should we find a grant that would fund some of this, then, because the town doesn't have a lot of money, right, to buy anything, we can earmark this as well. And especially if should some of the properties which you've identified as residential use only then no longer be open space but single family use, just to counteract utilizing some of the space that has been sitting there for a while and then being able to acquire another piece of property that can kind of make up for any loss of open space, if that makes sense. So I put in there seek and identify any potential open space for acquisition to counter any loss due to change of use of existing open space for other uses. And then I put on there,
I object to
us, conservation, and board of selectmen.
I don't think that sets up the precedent that it's a trade. That is, if we acquire this, then that gives us permission to use that. And it's already open space, it's already if you were restoring land that was already developed and bringing natives back to it, then I think it's valid, but it's already helping our ecological state as it is, because it isn't developed. So developing another piece does not really, we're still at a net loss in the context of conservation, so I don't think that's apples to
Should we just
apples.
leave it like seek out and identify any potential open space for acquisition?
To expand the town's open space goals, would it kind of, I
Or
just.
do we have to put anything in there? Because then instead, we wouldn't seek it out, really, it'd be conservation, right? And then
Well, I don't know if there's
conservation
one
would
that
tell
already
us.
says this, right, that would,
I'm sure
my
there
suspicion
is
is there's one
somewhere.
that already says this.
I mean,
I feel like
the
there is.
the
I
fact
think
is
there
our
is.
charter doesn't get involved until it becomes.
Right, that's true. We don't seek
we-
it
we
out. So that would be
can't do
conservation would seek it out technically.
Yep.
I mean, or anybody could, the town could.
I mean,
the board of
the only
selectmen
thing I
could.
can say is,
They would bring it
maybe
to
it's
us.
good for us, since we're evaluating all these properties, we can identify ones that like, oh, look, we own everything this one's blocking, and we can say, keep an eye on that one, or maybe even approach the owners at some point. But we can make those recommendations as how to make these community-owned properties more useful
But-
by acquiring, the pieces in
What
the middle.
makes me think also is even as important or more, it would be identify blighted properties that you could then use for housing that would be good for acquisition, that could be affordable, easy affordable houses without destroying natural habitat.
Well, that'll be housing for sure. Maybe we don't, because we really shouldn't be looking for properties, right? I mean, we're just gonna have people, if they had an interest. I mean, we brought up Litchfield because we know Litchfield's coming down at some point, or it's an interested party, or the town is interested, and I'm sure conservation is too. So I guess we'll just cross that one off.
But yes, to your point, the only reason we're already saying, oh, that should be preserved as open space is because of its surrounding area, which is
Okay.
bus rack. So if
And
it
it's
was,
all the trails.
Meaning
and,
we're
yeah,
not-
It's
we're
part of the greenway.
yeah.
correct, but what I'm saying is if it was in a housing development and it was something that, like we've done before, so to your point, yeah, we want to stay out of,
We're gonna stay out
it
of it.
should be this, it
We're
should be
staying
this.
out of it.
I agree.
We'll
We
stay out of
let
it.
conservation know and they tell us.
Alrighty.
Then you let us know. That's not how it goes.
Makes sense.
Okay. On page 148, Ed indicated make maps, photos, and descriptions of town-wide open space and recreational amenities prominently available.
Which number?
148.
Page 148. Now, I don't,
We're on it.
is this,
We should be on that.
yeah, I put that there. I put conservation,
I'm curious if that's a
agricultural
maintenance thing,
commission,
though.
town trail master, what?
Is it in our charter to, like, what we're gonna do is we're gonna evaluate and report about all the town-owned properties.
Yeah, you're not on this, so.
What we do, what happens after that, how the public knows about it or what they can do on those is out of our purview, really. Like, we've made the recommendations, like, should we be announcing or distributing documentation outside of our reports?
No, I mean, they're on the site, right, so they'll just be, they would go on there and see, but I guess to your point, you mean, you talk about making maps and taking pictures and stuff like that, and making,
Right,
and a
outside of
documented report?
what's in our report, I don't think we should be doing anything, we just build the reports and deliver them.
Yeah, I mean, the question is, does this have anything to do with the use or potential use of publicly owned properties to create pictures and maps identifying the publicly? I mean, we do keep the list that does identify the publicly owned properties, right?
It's public, right, and we can go out today and search the
Right.
GIS.
So this would be
This
like
is
the
more like
second
maintenance.
step.
To me, this is more trail master, recreation, conservation if they want to do things, like, to me, that's more in the maintenance
Okay.
mode.
Now, do we need to be involved because we have to give them the list of all the
But
publicly owned properties?
you've already defined that, that's our,
I don't think so.
build the report of publicly owned
Mm-hmm.
properties, that's already been defined.
Because it says makes maps, photos, and descriptions of towns, open space, and recreational amenities, so.
But I would say that has to come from the committee that's, if it's a recreational property, that should come from rec. If it's a, open space, it should come from conservation. If it's, this building, it should come from
Okay.
whatever organizations.
So we're taking that off?
We're not on it now.
Oh, then we're not on it, alright. Examine options for establishing page 148, sorry guys. Examine options for establishing dedicated and protected open space on the country club. So we definitely are gonna need to be added here, as is everybody else that is involved with the
What
country
page is
club.
that?
Page 148. It was in 2015. Again, same reason for why we were added to the housing one for a country club, right? So it's just more specifically, it's a specific property as opposed to our general state, which we are keeping as well. So we kept ourselves, or added ourselves, I should say, onto the housing component of the country club. We should be added to this one for the dedicated and protected open space on the country club, as should conservation, who is not on there, as should the trail master, who's not on there, right? It's just board of selectmen, right? Is that it?
Just board of selectmen.
Right, so,
I didn't hear the same one for economic development or sustainability.
Well, this-
There should be.
I
separate
imagine,
ones for each of
I
these.
imagine that the way it's gonna be set up, that there's gonna be, whatever they say about the country club is not going to align with the ones that they had scattered throughout the report here.
Right, right.
Because with this new committee of committees forming,
Right.
like, it's a much more salient issue of like, we're going to do something about this sooner. So I agree that, yeah, anywhere we should emphasize, you know, it's the largest, or one of the largest tracts of publicly owned property. Anything about it, we should
Yeah.
be
Involved.
on the
It
list
should
for.
be one goal, country club, and then
And
it's
everybody's
open
involved.
space, housing,
Right.
EDC.
And I suspect it will be set up more like that,
Yeah.
but yeah, we certainly should be involved in anything involving that
Right.
large tract of
Yeah.
publicly owned
Because
property.
I went through the list, to that point, I went through it initially and then added in, of course, some things that we're already working on now that wasn't in this list. But I think it is important to that point that we emphasize just that anytime the country club is mentioned in this report, we should be involved, as should be anyone else that has an interest in the country club, where they were not listed on that.
We
so.
haven't so far, like we had we reviewed the proposals for the.
Right, exactly,
Consultant,
exactly.
and,
Mhm.
you know, there was a survey that was issued a while ago, whatever. So,
Right,
I mean, we
exactly.
have been.
Right, so
So it
we'll
should
continue to
continue.
be, right,
Yeah.
exactly. So I put on that for us to be added, obviously conservation, you know, trail master, et cetera. Everybody should be involved in that. Okay. Again, same thing. This wasn't in there, and I believe I put this in here. To your point, actually, we must be on the same page. Examine options for establishing recreational space on the CCW. Again, that would be recreation, that would be CUPOP, you know, et cetera, right? It's the same thing. And we could go down the line for everybody. And it's like exactly what's going to probably happen, as you indicated. In 2015, it indicated, I'm going to page 149, assess conditions in the center building, especially for, assess conditions, what is it? What's
Especially for senior and police
Yeah.
department facilities, so that's
Yeah.
what you already were saying.
Yeah. So we should definitely,
So
and
repeat that.
prioritize needed improvements. And that's still on the list.
I think there's a similar item about the library on there.
Oh, there is?
The library
Did I
is
miss
an
that
important
one?
resource and social center, that one.
Yeah, I mean, I noted that there were specific properties that it mentioned, which were the old firehouse, the center building, and the library. I think the description of the library, there was a concern about it being too humid for book storage or something.
That sounds like public work.
Right, no, I'm not saying you should volunteer for that. I'm just saying there were a couple examples of specific properties that are already built up properties
Right.
that made it to the list. So
Mhm.
I think that's consistent with what we talked about earlier about fire department or country club having their own line items.
Is there, and correct me if I'm wrong here, I didn't hear anything about the Beecher School, but there's a lot of things that, you know, like the pool and things like that, like,
There was nothing here, I agree.
I know, but should there, we
I
should.
think part of
Yeah,
it
we're
needs
gonna,
to
at
be
the end, I'm gonna ask you guys what's missing from here, and I'm gonna make
Yep.
a list, and then we'll do that. I just have 3 more things to get through.
I'm always trying to get ahead,
I
that's.
know, yeah, right. Now, there's a couple things, getting back to page 147, which is conservation heavy, I'll call it. So on 147, one item which I know conservation keeps, you guys keep your own list and inventory of open space, right? So I don't know if that's something, well, it says continue to maintain local inventory of protected open space and add parcels where appropriate. That was in 2015, and that was for Conservation Commission. Oh yes, that's specific to conservation, right? Add parcels, you know, recommendation for acquisition where appropriate. We keep a list of our, you know, our own, right, of the publicly owned properties, and we do mark it as whether it's protected or unprotected on our list. So I don't know, I mean, I'm assuming you're gonna keep that on your list for conservation, right? Okay, so, I mean, we don't wanna get involved with adding parcels, but we definitely have a list of protected open
And
space.
you know, I think we should coordinate that list
Yeah.
of protected. And also, one of the things that came up in our meeting is you guys having an accurate list of subdivisions where the 10% were given for open space, so you don't consider those as use for recreation.
Right, and that's what we're doing as we
Anything
go through, because we don't have all of those, so that's what we're doing right
But
now.
Chris may just have them and be able to give that to us to simplify, because you wouldn't even have to look at those then. Because
Right.
they have a restricted use.
Right.
So I think maybe if we coordinated, or
Yeah.
maybe you, me, and Diana could just
Yeah.
ask Chris and just make that list. It doesn't have to be
I still think we have to
complicated.
look at it because we have to make sure like the deeds were actually
Right, it'll be in the
correctly
deed, it'd be
and-
easier to
or-
have that ahead of time, but it
Or
would be in the
maybe it's
deed.
not on the deed and we need to have it corrected.
Yeah, right,
Right.
exactly, like we did with Enoch, yeah. Yes, we haven't come across one yet, but, oh no, I did, I came across one so far, I think.
I think there were a couple that,
We've definitely discussed a property or two that fits
The
that
one
description.
I did the Anthony Road.
Yours, that's right, yours is a set aside for a division, that's right.
They
that was- I
took
knew
the
we had
crappiest
one
part of
coming
the
up.
property and set
Right.
that aside.
So-
yes, and Eldersley has parts of that, a bunch of
Yeah.
ones have that.
So we should definitely, I mean, I'm wondering if this is something that, I mean, I don't wanna be on to the add parcels where appropriate part, but I would certainly think that we could be involved in keeping a inventory of the protected open space piece of it. So I don't know how you're gonna word that, but we
Yeah.
we could definitely talk
Yeah.
about that. So I'm gonna put me as a maybe on that, because I
Okay.
definitely wanna be part of the first part, but not the second part.
Well, maybe even distinguish that you want to be
Right.
part of the protected part,
Okay.
or the
The inventory list.
inventory part.
Do we have to be careful, because it can be open space but not community owned, right? So we are only involved with the community owned open space.
So it's not a complete list, it's a community-based open space
Right,
protected list, and we'll just define it as such.
right.
Because Woodbridge Land Trust has a whole bunch of others that partly you have.
Some of which we own, but they have easements on, or, stuff like that, right?
So having a list at the end of all the.
Protective space, that could be a separate list, right?
It would be quick to look at.
Right.
That would be very helpful for us.
We should do that.
That'd be great.
All right, so we'll make a line item, an action item for that, and then we can definitely make that list, that'd be great.
And that would be a good, as a goal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All
goal.
right, we're on it, we
Great.
got it. They're called community, or we'll call publicly owned, open space, protected, publicly owned property, got it, okay.
And maybe different criteria, least,
10%,
10%,
we'll call it subdivision, because sometimes that yours is way
land
over
trust,
10%.
land trust easement.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd
Okay,
be very
good.
helpful to us.
All right, good, us too. Hopefully somebody has a list somewhere, but we're gonna have to look at it anyway, so.
The GIS has all that metadata.
Oh, good,
Great.
good. Now, there was another one on 147 that said, develop use classification for open space. That was a long time ago. That was with CUPOP and conservation, like a decade, almost a decade, no, that can't be that long. Let's say 5 years ago.
Between 5 and
They tried to
plus
do that or
years, yeah.
something,
Yep.
so I feel like that was already done. So that may be done, so we can cross that off the list.
I'm not sure we've done that so well, but.
Yeah, I know. I know we tried to do it, and
It's
that
a
was
very hard
just.
thing to do.
And then, on that same token, develop guidelines for management of open space by use designation. I feel like that falls in the maintenance realm for us.
You went off of that one?
I don't know,
No way.
I mean, I don't know, what do you
You
think? I mean,
know.
develop guidelines for management of open space by use designation. And it was us, conservation, board of selectmen, and recreation, right? No, CUPOP wasn't added in that.
No,
No,
our
yeah.
CUPOP is there.
Oh.
I don't know, that one confuses me.
Because
Maybe
what,
we
I
should
mean,
all
why
talk
would
about that one.
we, let me ask a question, just speaking out here, and we have, you're here from conservation. Why would we develop guidelines for management? Isn't it managed by the town?
I think you're helping develop the classification system. Not the
Oh,
management.
am I?
It's the Apply classification system to existing. It's just a very, just speaking honestly, apply a classification system to existing open space parcels. So the idea is, does it have a, good view? Does it have, a lot of
It's all
water
the
resources?
metadata.
It's hard to, it's like mixing apples and pear. It's like,
Yeah.
is this piece of land better than the other? I'm
Yeah,
finding it a hard,
I don't know if
Yeah.
that needs to,
you want to get off all those.
yeah, does that
I
really need to
think-
be a thing?
Our reports
It's
should,
enough for that,
should
that should
provide
answer all
that
that, right?
information.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But we need to define what are those attributes that we want to capture in those reports.
Actually, there's a national, the natural resources inventory, which actually also Ridgefield has done an incredible job, which you might be able to really help. It's like, watersheds and farmland, and you just do map after map and it helps one define which pieces of land are kind of more valuable. Does this have a watershed that enters into the Long Island Sound? Does this one have, and that's actually kind of one of the ultimate goals that would be good to do. And
So it sounds like you want us on, because we're gonna find this out when we're doing the descriptive. So, all right, I guess we'll stay on it.
But I think actually we should meet about that,
Yeah.
because that's overwhelming for us.
Is that so develop use classification for open space, is that what that is? Yeah, that's it, right?
Well,
Develop,
we're gonna maybe make a goal for doing
It's not just
natural resource
classification.
inventory, and we'd like to have you be at least technical help and logistical help for that. Because,
I guess we'll stay on that.
So I think for us, that list is not just the natural resources. It's gonna be like sewer is available, water is available,
Exactly,
power is available.
yeah.
You know, these are
Yeah, well,
other
the
things
Public
that,
utilities
that
and
wouldn't
that,
necessarily
there
yeah.
be
could be so many layers to
conservation,
this,
right?
Right.
So all, just
So
so
is
that
that
to be clear,
develop
all
use-
of that data is already captured,
well,
and we have it.
But is that develop use classification for open space, or is that something else?
That,
It's classifying
the classification of
all
open space
town
is a
open
subset
space.
of that. It's
I
a
have
much
a
bigger
feeling
set.
that you have more technical and more knowledge of it than the people who are writing this report, so you might wanna talk to them, because your maps will be much more effective, because a lot of those pages are maps of those kind of things that may be up, I don't know where they're getting their information, maybe they have someone who's.
I mean, I just have the maps that are produced by, the town clerk, basically.
Well, what, can you think of something to call that action item and let me know
I
before
mean,
the next
I
meeting?
think it's the report that we're talking about. Our report should categorize all of that.
But for like an agenda item on here, that
A
conservation and
multi-layered-
CUPOP is going to be involved in, what are we gonna call it? It's not, because calling it develop use classification for open space is not accurate.
That's a good point.
So what do we call it?
No, for us, it's classify and
Identify
maintaining records
attributes
of, or
publicly owned properties.
Yeah.
of all
That's
And
what
properties,
we're
then
doing.
not
you
just
could
open
give
space.
examples, power, soil types, water.
Okay. Classify and identify what?
It just the
Attributes.
attributes of
Attributes.
publicly owned properties such as, and then,
List 5 or 6, 4 or 5, they give you
All
an
right,
idea.
email me that, because I'm never gonna get that right.
Okay.
Okay, good. Okay, let me know that so I can add onto the list. And that's a better way to describe it, because we're not gonna limit it to open space. We're gonna do
but
that for
open space
everything.
and the types of open space are just some of those
A
attributes.
subset, because we have,
Right,
yeah.
exactly.
And then I'll put conservation on there too, so, okay, perfect.
Well, you should put recreation, because even things like playground equipment is actually, in these maps too. So if there's playground equipment in a public park, it's on the map. I can tell you like the GPS coordinates of that
Okay.
playground equipment,
Perfect.
as long as it's been updated. Or there's a telephone pole there,
Mhm.
all of that information is in these
Perfect.
maps.
So I'm gonna call an attribute.
Or the toilet facilities, or,
The toilet facilities,
Water, or-
sewer, even
One
the
day we'll
septic
have
tank
toilet
locations of every
facilities.
property in Woodbridge. I mean,
Wow.
it's like, it's
So,
crazy.
Let
crazy
me,
information.
so the last thing I have on this list is page 139. I don't know I don't know why I have it on here. I must have been, I don't know why, but it said, focus on unique strengths that Woodbridge has. That one. And look for opportunities to collaborate with surrounding municipalities to strengthen economic network. One of our unique strengths is obviously our trail system, right? And, we have natural resources here, right, that we could coordinate with municipalities. I don't know, I mean, that could potentially involve, changing the use of a publicly owned property or, something of that nature. I don't know if I'm grasping at straws here at this point, but, what do you think they're thinking of there?
Focus on the unique strengths.
well, one
That's
thing
part
you
of
could
the
say
business
to
model.
support the Litchfield property is the connection between the town and the West River, whatever that alliance is, that, and,
In the New Haven
and
trails.
also maybe the Regional Water Authority and how it connects different towns together.
Because it could potentially involve us saying,
I think they would come to us.
they would,
I think
right?
it's an EDC or a,
It's definitely EDC.
no, I just mean, I think it's the other boards doing their thing, and they come to us and say, we're looking for something like this.
Do we need to put our name on there or no?
I don't think that's our charge to
No?
do that. It's my opinion.
It may be an acquisition piece, potential acquisition or a change of use. If there was a property and we say, use it for, I don't know, what am I thinking of, like a trail, or use it for to connect a trail for a bike race, or, you know, you don't think we should be on that?
They'd come to you.
Did come, all right, I'm crossing it off. All right, so that is the entire list from here. Now, what did I miss? Beecher.
So I think,
Change in use of Beecher. I'm gonna tell you right now, oh, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
I was gonna say, I have one that we didn't mention, I just lost it, but it was creating a process to purchase properties. It was something along those lines. And it's listed on Board of Selectmen.
Yeah, so
I don't-
we
I don't
have a
think-
process already.
I don't think we should be.
And we don't do that, that's ordinance. We,
Because-
and that,
Conservation should be put on that. What page is
Hold
it?
on, sorry. So it's 148. Develop a formal policy
you are on it, we're on
and
it.
procedure. We're not.
No, we're not?
It's only Board of Selectmen. So I'm bringing it up because it specifically calls out, so develop a formal process and procedure for acquisitions of open space and publicly owned property. So adopt policy formalizing the acquisitions process, blah, blah, blah. So I know, what I'm saying is,
We did, let me tell you something, I don't interrupt you, but you're right, we should be on that. I'll tell you why. Because I did create that a couple of years ago, and it went nowhere.
Well, I've gotta say,
yeah, because
look at
I've
that.
asked the
Remember that?
question of how, so let's say as a town we want to buy something, what's the policy?
Okay,
What's
we
the
do have
procedure?
one, so we do have a procedure, and what I did is I created, and I had given this to Tim, I created a, you know those books that are like, you know, whatever for dummies, you know, that type of thing? Well, I did this thing, it was, remember you saw it, it was great.
Will you send it to me?
I will, I gotta find it now, it was fantastic, and it was basically the procedure, I say so myself. And it was basically, you know, I hate to say dumbing down, but it was a dumbing down of the process and the procedure that is in existence. I'm not kidding.
Why don't you send it to Mika right now?
I know I should. You know, that's a good idea. And so now that you mention that, I didn't even see that on there. We did do that. There is a policy. There is a procedure that has to be followed. Okay. And I created it, and I actually put in conservation was in there, and all the different
Right.
committees and commissions.
Then it was derailed because there was a legal concern.
They're really well.
Right? Isn't, well, that's how you worded it.
But-
You said,
but
well,
you guys
we're
are-
gonna put this
The
aside
attorney, the town
because-
attorney at the time
Yes.
did not want me distributing this for some reason, and I didn't understand the reason why, but now we have another town attorney, and we have a different, you know, board now, so I'm going to, you know, have this resurface,
But-
and it's
So-
actually
But
very
is that
helpful.
part of the CUPOP charter?
No, that was my question, everybody.
It
Specifically
is, because we're in
mentions-
it.
But
Do
but
we
it's not-
own that policy as a
No.
board?
All I did was, there already is a policy in place, there's already, that we have to follow. We don't create anything, we're not involved with that. It's already in existence, that policy is in existence. So,
Then my interpretation for this purpose is that's no longer.
it's no longer an issue. This is aside.
I do have to say for the little bit that I'm noticing, or not noticing about the properties that are under consideration, the process is very varied and very random. And maybe that will improve it, but on the other hand.
I did read I read everything, I got it from all the different state statutes, this and that, and I put it all together.
I'd
And
like to
it's,
read it.
yeah,
That'd be
it's
great.
actually very, when you read it, you're like, oh, this is pretty easy, right? And it's kind of cutting through all the statutory language, because there's state statute involved, because of conservation, right? It's always conservation's fault, it's state statute. I'm just kidding. And then there's, you know, all of our Woodbridge regulations that we have to follow. So I'll certainly pass it along.
Do you
What-
guys
what
know about
about-
this? This is happening, it should be quite interesting. It's a historic finding of charcoal, I guess.
Oh, yeah, I'll talk to you about that, I want to talk about that, but, okay.
Yeah,
So perfect, so I'll spread that out. So to answer your question, we
So,
already have a
and that-
process.
Then that one should be taken.
And even if we didn't, I mean, that should be the Board of Selectmen creating that.
Well, that was my question about it, but if it's already done, then strike the goal and we're all set.
Can I ask the opposite? Do we have a policy on
Relinquishing.
selling publicly owned properties?
Yes,
that's the one we should be really involved.
It has to be, well, we already have it, it's already in there.
Yeah, that's
it's-
pretty
that's-
understood.
Yeah, it's very understood, it has to go to town,
Hearing,
vote,
yeah,
yeah,
referendum.
so, referendum, so that's, and that's in there actually. So, I will pass it out to everyone, it's very, it came right from our regulations and stuff, so. So there wasn't any question as to how, everything worked out and what the procedure was, and you kind of follow the little arrow. This is what you do with this. It was fantastic if I do. So we will, I'll show that to Mika, and then I'll show you guys what I'm talking about. Beecher, we didn't put Beecher in here. There's a building department. Okay, bye, I'll see you later.
So, yeah, so I was thinking about what's missing.
Can you send that, I'm sorry, can you send that to me via email that?
You can have it.
Oh, I can, thank you.
Sorry, I wrote on a little
Beecher,
bit.
I don't know that we have to be directly involved, but we,
Well, they may change the use of part of the building, potentially. That could potentially happen. What if they, listen, if they get rid of the recreational piece of the building and use it for something else, or if they use it for recreation, like if, for example, what's gonna happen with the pool? What if they use that
I don't
for
think that's our charge to
the
decide.
use of a publicly
So
owned
there's a
property?
consultant that they hired for the pool analysis too. And there was,
Do you guys
that
think
might
that's our
still be
charge?
ongoing.
Well, I think it's our
Wouldn't that
charge
be
to make,
recreation?
Board of Ed, I would
Board
think.
of Ed, recreation?
But it's changing the use of a publicly owned property. We're
Nothing-
buildings
no,
too.
no. Again, this is if they decide to play lacrosse versus soccer, we don't care. They move the goals around.
No.
that's
But
not
if they-
changing a use though.
No, but
That's not
It's on the
changing use.
continuum.
they put a baseball field in instead of a soccer field. Now you're ripping up the dirt, you're doing things like that. Are those things that this board is charged with? That's, again, I do
I
care
would
about
say,
the
I would
pool.
say yes. That literally is where there some maybe
It's
at
kinda
that
like
point we just go that's if it's the permits are good and
I can see both sides. This is kind of the trail maintenance thing.
But
Like,
there is a committee
It's
that's
designated as a
managing the
school.
study of this.
and partially recreation, the two people that worry about it are the Board of Ed and Parks and Rec. We don't get,
But
is that this board's job?
it
That's kind of
is
my
because
question.
we don't know what's gonna happen if they're gonna wanna change the use of that entire, was that the south side? What side of it was the pool on? South, north, whatever side the pool is
South
on.
is, the pool is south.
Because currently it is technically recreation, right? Because it's the pool, that's where the recreation offices used to be, right? Now, we don't know what the building committee is going to come up with because there is a committee that is investigating the
What to
use
do
of
with
that
each-
building and what to do with it, okay? And there's a lot of different
pool.
ideas on the table with the pool
With
and
expansion,
Beecher in general.
pool, second floor, wing,
Yeah,
like there's all these.
So I have to step out because I'm the consultant for that, professionally.
All right, we're not getting into details. I'm just
No.
saying,
My
no
firm
matter,
is
yeah.
hired to do that study,
All good.
so
Okay.
But
we're,
as far as
we're
our
doing that, so
involvement,
I
I'm okay with,
guess I can't
I
really
guess,
weigh in.
my only hesitation is, to me, this is more like trail maintenance than what this, but I guess you're saying the Beecher project is bigger, could potentially be bigger than that.
Well, and I guess, and I agree, I mean, there's a spectrum from one end to the other, and I think where this starts to get into gray area, at least in some of our minds, maybe it's actually a black and white thing, is that the property is not, what you're saying is it's not exclusively used by the Board of Ed.
Right,
It's used by the Board of Ed and by
recreation.
recreation. So in a sense, if you're deciding we're going to remove
The
the recreation element
that falls
and
into
either
us.
hand it over to Board of Ed or do something else with it, that's sort of you take a step
Thumbs up.
back and
Talk me into it.
now you're in
I'm good.
the environment of this is
I'm
a
good.
property the town owns, it's being moved around.
And to be
Ah.
clear, I'm not, the consultant for the pool, I'm not involved in that, so I could be involved in that conversation.
Sure.
I'm talking more about the school.
And the other thing is too, I know that when we were in our sustainability, kind of meetings that we're trying to get going, that there was discussion to ensure that the roof that was being placed on Beecher was a roof that eventually could have some kind of solar placed on it if we should go forward with adding that to publicly owned buildings, which therefore falls into our sustainability piece that we added ourselves onto. So, I mean,
Yeah,
listen,
yeah.
they can take us off. I mean, I'm just saying,
cost of
yeah.
maintaining the pool is
Right.
about sustainability.
right. So I'm thinking if we just, I don't even know how to word with Beecher, just say if there's any potential for change in use by either, for example, removing recreation or something of that nature, then CUPOP should be added to.
I'm
I
assuming-
think,
I
much like
always-
the country club, if Beecher's going to be one
Someone
of the
else is
headline
gonna bring
items,
this in.
Yeah.
and we just wanna make sure that we're included.
Yeah,
Yep.
I just pointed out because I'm guessing someone's gonna be going for some grants,
Sure.
you know.
Yeah,
Something like
Beecher's
that.
definitely gonna be a new thing that they had in a bunch of ways. We wanna be tagged in there, I think, is what
Yeah.
we're all saying.
So like sustainability, recreational use, right, and all, et cetera. The other thing, oh, it just escaped my brain. I just said something about Beecher I want to say. Yeah, so I think that's probably good with Beecher.
I mean,
Oh, I know, I want to give an example because, you know,
Sure.
with the whole, for whatever reason, well, I'll get into that later. Anyway, go ahead, what were you gonna say?
I have a whole nother one to add. Based on the survey, though, I don't particularly love the survey, because it was only 7% and it seemed to favor,
Well, that's high for a town.
It is, but I also have some statistical questions about it. I'll
Yeah,
let you
so-
go
Don't
first.
ask me because
No,
I'm
but
not in charge.
I took a lot of probability and stats
Okay.
classes, very hard to glean things from a study that is like that, but they did their best, okay. So one of the items in there was adding something like services not down in the village, but up in the center of town or somewhere near there. So coffee, deli kind of services, grocery, so.
And we own publicly owned property in the middle of town.
So
Yeah.
knowing that's in there, I'm assuming that's gonna come up from someone, EDC or someone.
has to be, right?
Right, so I'm assuming somebody else, just like Beecher, someone else is gonna bring that in, we should be tagged on that, right?
So EDC IDing publicly owned property for potential,
Change of use, including development,
Yeah, yeah.
as identified in the survey. I mean, I'm sure it'll get put into the
So,
narrative.
For example, right now it could be, hey, the police are moving, we're gonna change that to a commercial rentable unit. I don't know what that looks like legally, but now they're gonna have shops in there, okay? Right, like, that's the thing I imagine coming along, we wanna be involved in that, right?
okay,
Yeah.
got it. So EDC identifying publicly owned property for potential change of use regarding development as ID'd in the survey. If I can read my handwriting tomorrow,
Yeah,
that'd be
particularly up
great.
here, the,
Oh, in center of town?
Yeah.
yeah.
It's funny because you guys said village, I was thinking, that's up here.
No, is that the new name?
No, so
I always
that's,
called it
no,
the flats.
so
right?
It's now the
the old,
village.
the old name was either the Flats or Amity. The report from 2015 calls it the Village. The survey calls it the Business District.
Oh,
So it's a moving target.
Yeah.
So
I-
Business
I was
District
saying
apparently
village,
is
'cause that
what's
was
in
what I was
now.
reading over, and I'm like, okay, I assume they mean down
So I
there.
could change it to business
I would
district?
consider up here the village,
But
because
it's-
this is.
Oh no, this is the center of town.
Right, the center of town, the
That's
gazebo,
like,
the town
I
hall.
like the geographic,
Street.
that's the flats, and
Center
this is
Road,
up the hill, right, up the
Yeah.
hill, right? That's-
Okay, so I'm gonna call it the business district now?
That's the terminology they used in the survey. I don't know how widespread that is, but I noticed that when I was going through the survey.
Okay.
But the
Today.
business district has homes in it, like,
Right.
I-
It's like
I'm not
village district. but-
Endorsing the title, I'm just telling you that's what they call
but
it.
it is where
all the businesses.
all the business.
Yeah,
Yeah, for the most part, yeah.
Flats, I like that one. Much more accurate.
Okay.
Alright,
Did I miss anything else? I'm going to try to clean this
No, the
up
only-
as best I can for the meeting.
the only other big one in their survey was, cell service for people that live that way.
That's
Let me tell you something.
already dealt with.
No,
The new tower.
I'm just saying, what was in the survey, people were kinda yelling
I don't
at.
have cell service in my house, so.
I do.
I
Tell me
have
that right
very
now.
little, but they're putting in a tower like right next door.
I have
So,
one at the horse farm.
Where-
Oh, do you
Most
live,
people
do
don't
you
know it's
live?
there, the horse
Oh,
farm
I know,
tower.
okay.
so I live on October Hill, which is right off Orchard, and they're talking about they're going to put the tower in. It's technically I
Next
think
door to my friend,
on
actually.
Newton, but the property backs up behind
It's off Soundview.
Soundview, right? Like the street address is Newton
Right
because
next
the
to my
property
friend's
owner's
house.
street fronts to
It's gotta be
Newton.
somewhere.
So my street address is Seymour, but my driveway is not Newton.
Alright, so cell service, which we wouldn't have anything to do with, and
I
that's
just meant if
it.
it's on property, the same rule, right? Somebody's
Right.
gotta come talk to us.
If that, I'm gonna ask if that'll be on there somewhere, that maybe. I mean, basically, we're gonna be involved in a lot of stuff coming up, so I don't think it's gonna be an issue having
Lot of work.
our initials on all these things, so.
And it's not long-term projects that we're involved in, it might just be, you know, someone coming to the board to present something and then
Well, I think the country club is gonna be the
Well,
longest, getting through our list is gonna be long.
Yeah, a lot of them are long-term.
It sounds like the country club's above us, right, a bit, right, it's more.
Yes.
There's gonna be a separate committee with Board of Selectmen, I haven't caught the recent Board of Selectmen meeting, but
It's gonna be representatives
There will
from
definitely
each.
be a building committee
There'll be
and-
representatives,
Yes.
from all of us. There'll be, yeah, representatives, so. that's
Yeah.
it. Okay, but we're gonna be involved because we are. the
they're not involved, but
property.
it's not,
It's gonna be
we're
just.
not gonna be in charge.
No one's gonna drop it in our lap and say, figure it out.
No, but we are going to have to be prepared to review all of the documents regarding this property, all of the input on this property, and we're going to have to create a recommendation for the Board of Selectmen. And if you think these other properties have been voluminous, this one is gonna be very, so.
As it should be.
All right, so we've got, it's 154 acres, so it's more than two. So, all right,
I've been biking there.
I'm going to-
I know the whole thing.
so I'm going to try to clean this up. I will have it ready as an attachment to the agenda for our next meeting, I hope, which is that next Monday?
Monday, yeah.
Yep.
Oh boy, I will, yes, I'm gonna have to. So I'll get it ready for Monday. I will try to have it distributed with the agenda. If I cannot, I will certainly provide it, I hope by Friday, to Tony so she can give it to everybody. If not, I will have it over the weekend. So everybody will have it to review, and feel free to correct anything when we get to the meeting. And that's it. Okay?
So who's making a motion to?
Motion to adjourn?
Okay, any second?
Second.
Oh, okay.